This dude basically went full hermit in his bedroom just to escape his absolute nightmare of a dad and stepmom. His so-called school friends totally backstabbed him, joining the bullies just to save their own skin. So he barricaded the door and blew all his waking hours grinding video games. Flexing as the most OP Minecraft architect on the planet, he spent his time custom building massive virtual maps, crafting safe havens, where nobody could lay a finger on him. That is, until one random night. A blazing portal of straight-up hellfire ripped open right in the middle of his floor. Out of the flames spawned Baphomet, a top-tier demon lord, and he dropped a wild pitch. Hell was dealing with a massive overpopulation problem and desperately needed an expansion pack. The demon wanted Sung Gi to be the head architect of the 20th Circle of Hell. The ultimate payoff, he'd get the god-tier power to drag any backstabber straight down into it. Sung Gi didn't even blink. Deal. Going hard on the theme of betrayal, he engineered an absolute inescapable meat grinder of a dungeon. Once it was primed, he started hunting down the absolute trash who ruined his life one by one. The shut-in who hadn't touched grass in months. He finally held the ultimate master key, and he knew exactly whose doors he was going to kick down first. Those two-faced friends were getting served first. After that, maybe he'd actually reshape this twisted world without fumbling the bag like Kira did. But let's rewind a few days. Yeom Sung-gi was just a miserable 18-year-old kid. His bedroom looked way more like a creepy abandoned storage unit with boarded-up windows or some sad, isolated gaming den. Out in the hallway, his dad hammered on the door, screaming his lungs out for him to get out of bed. The irony, that screaming dad was the exact reason he refused to leave. The woman standing next to his dad tried to play peacekeeper, begging him to just chill out and be patient. She had literally moved her stuff into their house the second Sung-gi's real mom packed up and vanished. And it was super obvious she only cared about her own bank account, not the broken teenager sitting next door. So he just stayed dead silent in the dark. The happy couple quickly dipped to go grab dinner, buying him a few more hours of peace. Sung-gi had heard every single word through the thin walls. A second later, his phone buzzed. A text from Kim Sung-hwan. It said his school suspension was officially over, which basically meant he was scheduled to come back and get beat to a pulp all over again. Flashback to 3 months ago at his Korean high school. A brutal fist winds up and absolutely decks a kid, sending him flying across the pavement. The rest of the bully squad just stands around, laughing their heads off at the bloodied kid on the ground. But one guy in the circle looks insanely guilty. The punching bag on the floor. That was Yeom Sung-gi. The head bully barks at him to get up so he can drop him again. Desperate, Yeom Sung-gi crawls over and begs Sung-hwan. The same guy awkwardly looking away, pleading for mercy, desperately reminding him they'd been best bros since elementary school. Sung-hwan stares down at his childhood bestie in the dirt, the nostalgia flashing through his eyes. But he snaps back to reality the second the alpha bully glares over and asks if he's seriously friends with a pathetic loser like that. The boss sneers, guessing that's exactly why Sung-hwan was too much of a coward to throw a punch, panicking to save his own social status. Instead of pulling his bro up, Sung-hwan viciously kicks him right in the ribs. He starts screaming that they were never friends. Like, where did he even get that completely delusional idea? Sung-hwan just keeps stomping on him relentlessly. The other goons hype him up, piling on the pure raw humiliation. Even seeing his face completely black and blue, Sung-hwan spits at him, warning him to never ever dare call him a friend again. He'd rather sell his soul than end up bottom-tier trash like Yeom Sung-gi, snapping back to the present day. Our guy was still hopelessly glued to his game. Honestly, it completely made sense why he wanted to rot in this digital isolation. The game UI flashes, asking if he wants to save his custom-crafted realm. He smashes yes, deciding to upload this brand new mega build straight to the server. While the loading bar crept up, he zoned out, double-checking all the insanely detailed traps and specs he'd programmed in. At least in this glowing pixelated reality, nobody could stab him in the back. He finally dropped the map link onto the community forums, and within minutes his inbox was blowing up with gamers hyping up his insane new drop. Crashing on his mattress, Yeom Sung-gi desperately tried to gaslight himself into believing that this was all he needed in life. But no matter how hard he tried to accept that hiding in his room pushing pixels was enough, it was a total lie. Deep down, he was drowning in loneliness, paralyzed by the sheer terror of trusting the outside world again, until eventually he drifted off to sleep. He pushed himself up. His dad and that woman were probably already knocked out for the night. Slumping back into his computer chair, he scrolled through the comments on his custom map. The hype was totally unreal. Players were absolutely obsessed with the brutal difficulty and insane level design. Knowing people actually messed with his work gave him a rare spark of joy. Out of nowhere, a random DM popped up in the corner of his monitor. The text was beyond weird. It literally read, "Greetings, human. I thoroughly enjoyed your game. The vibes actually perfectly match the real underworld. Could we meet face to face to discuss constructing the actual abyss? Yom Sung-gi cringed. It felt like some edgy 12-year-old role-playing a job interview. Plus, how exactly were they supposed to meet up without dropping a pin? Right then, a bone-chilling deep voice echoed from the darkest corner of his room. It whispered that tracking down a mere mortal was child's play. Then, a sharp snap of fingers pierced the silence. Boom! A blazing, fiery rift tore right through his bedroom wall. He stared blindly at the crimson glare, utterly convinced his entire room was going up in smoke. But stepping out of the roaring inferno, a massive silhouette materialized, sending Sung-gi's heart straight into his throat. The entity's demonic base vibrated against the walls as he dropped his introduction. He claimed to be the overlord of the soon-to-be-built 20th underworld, the name Baphomet. Our boy just let out a heavy sigh. Yep, the endless depression and months of rotting in his room had finally broken his brain. He was straight up hallucinating demons now. Heavy footsteps shook the floorboards. Before he could blink, Baphomet closed the gap and hoisted him up by his arm. I am no mere illusion, the demon growled, stating he was here to put the kid's twisted genius to work. Sung-gi froze, terror flooding his veins. This nightmare was 100% real. He violently yanked his arm free and scrambled backward. But Baphomet coldly ordered him to chill out, warning him that if he threw a tantrum, he'd rip out his brain and snack on it to download all those game design skills. Cut to them awkwardly sitting across from each other like the weirdest job interview in history. They locked eyes in dead silence as Sung-gi popped open a soda can. So, you're an actual demon, he stuttered. Baphomet flexed, stating he wasn't just real, he was top-tier demon royalty. Then, acting like this was a totally normal Tuesday, the giant beast casually took a sip of the soda. Taking a breath, Sung-gi asked if he had actually played his custom Hellcraft map. Baphomet nodded, admitting the kid's twisted architectural skills were seriously impressive. Sure, the layout wasn't visually stunning, but its psychological torture was a masterpiece, despite being completely unbeatable. He masterfully dangled a tiny sliver of hope in front of players, a brilliant illusion designed to maximize their suffering. It was sadistic yet elegantly balanced. Sung-gi just stared blankly, knowing deep down he only designed that nightmare to vent his massive built-up rage against the world. The Overlord explained that the underworld was running completely out of space, so a rapid expansion was desperately needed. And since Baphomet was handpicked to manage this brand new zone, he wanted Sung-gi as his lead architect. He needed the realm to function like an inescapable meat grinder or something even more diabolical. The kid hesitated, wanting absolutely zero part in this demonic startup. He just wanted to rot in peace and stick to his miserable little routine. Baphomet scoffed, looking around at the trash-filled room. How can you settle for such a pathetic garbage existence? But the demon had one final bargaining chip. With a whole new fiery domain under construction, they would need to run some beta tests before the official launch. That times caught the gamer's attention. The ultimate deal was this: if Sung-gi designed the Abyss, he'd get total VIP access to toss whoever he wanted into it. All those bullies who ruined his life. Wouldn't it feel amazing to trap them inside a torture chamber built by his own two hands? Driven by years of being crushed and a burning hatred for the ones who ruined him, Sung-gi's eyes darkened. The choice was made. He would be the underworld's new architect, snatching up the demonic key to seal the deal. If crafting a literal hell meant he could finally crush those snakes, Bro was ready to risk it all. He snatched that key like he'd been starving for this exact moment. Baphomet clapped his hands together. And just like that, the devilish deal was locked in. Hearing those terms, Sung-gi completely surrendered to his dark side, letting his pure rage take the wheel. He shook on it, officially selling his soul. The demon boss then asked what flavor of nightmare he wanted to cook up. See, building a hell requires two massive rules. Our boy asked what the catch was. Rule number 1, every hell needs a core theme. It's got to be tied to a specific crime like the hell of greed or the hell of lies. So he needed to pick a fresh sin for his personal playground. Since greed and deception were already taken, he had to target the exact vibe of the scumbags who ruined his life. Now, rule number 2, the layout had to be absolutely inescapable. The whole point of this place is to torture sinners for all eternity. If even one soul managed to break out, the entire dimension would collapse and the creator would instantly bite the dust. Basically, if Sung-gi's map had a glitch, Baphomet would take the heat. But the demon smoothly brushed it off, grinning as he promised that if a bug actually killed him, he'd make damn sure to shred the kid's soul first. Sung-gi gulped, feeling that heavy pressure. All right, time to get to work. Baphomet snapped his fingers and their entire reality glitched out. The clouds bled crimson and massive lightning strikes ripped through the city skyline. A huge bolt struck his house, surging straight into his PC setup. Before his eyes, the game engine on his monitor morphed into a completely demonic interface. While he was coding this brand new domain in-game, an army of demon grunts started building it in real time. Bro's computer was now fully hardwired into the underworld. It was showtime. A literal construction sign popped up and Baphomet just chilled watching the masterclass unfold. This demon was heavily addicted to soda, just chugging cans non-stop. Meanwhile, his hellish crew was hyped, practically vibrating as they waited for Sung-gi to drop the green light. A digital arrow spawned, and the demon foreman blew the whistle. The little minions swarmed the zone, stacking up the nightmare dungeon block by block. Fast forward a bit, and Baphomet was still spying on our boy, ever since they shook hands. Back in the mortal realm, exactly 7 days, 4 hours and 37 minutes had vanished. This kid hadn't slept a wink yet. He somehow coded an insanely massive, terrifying fortress. Baphomet couldn't help but wonder, was this human just built different? Or did his pure hatred give him a massive buff? Either way, the demon knew he backed the right horse. Suddenly, through the monitor, Sung-gi announced the map was complete. Baphomet gave him a slow clap. Genuinely hyped. The kid had speedrun the whole underworld creation, now it just needed a name. Without missing a beat, Sung-gi locked in his answer, the Hell of Betrayal. The classic save prompt popped up on his screen, a menu he knew all too well. He smashed that confirm button, officially saving his brand new torture map. Stretching his legs for the first time in months, he stepped out of his cave and spotted his wicked stepmom in the kitchen. It was payback time, but Baphomet whispered a quick warning. This server only accepts players who are guilty of straight-up betrayal. That was the ultimate catch. Sung-gi totally got it. If the target didn't fit the crime, the spell would flop. But if the key lit up, the gates of his personal underworld would burst wide open, dragging that sinner straight into the abyss. He crept up behind his stepmonster, who was completely zoned out, snapping flex pics of her brand new designer bag. Well, look, who finally crawled out of his cave. Go take a shower, she snapped. You stink exactly like your dead mother, she sneered. Sung-gi just stared at the glowing key in his hand. Now this was a massive gamble because he had literally just unlocked his own personal hell. Since nobody had time to rack up any fresh sins, yet he figured he'd have to wait a couple of days to test it out. But his wicked stepmom kept running her mouth, whining about why he was dodging her. Meanwhile, she was busy picking out the perfect aesthetic pic of her spoiled kid to post online. Honestly, every single time she complained, the urge to drag her straight into his underworld skyrocketed. She was absolute trash, and she totally deserved to suffer. See, back when she was just 23, his own mom got traded like a pawn in a shady arranged marriage. And because of that toxic setup, the poor woman spent her entire life suffering at the hands of his dad's twisted family. But despite the literal abuse, she would always force a warm smile whenever Yeom Sung-gi was around. When their whole world came crashing down, she was the one who had every right to just completely break down and bawl her eyes out. Yet she kept that gentle smile glued to her face. Yeom Sung-gi absolutely hated listening to those screaming matches, only to watch his mom walk out covered in fresh bruises, faking it like everything was totally fine. But in the end, she was still shoved out of the picture. If his dad had actually fallen in love, getting replaced by a younger chick would not have stung as badly. But this gold digger was so obviously just chasing the bag. The absolute worst part, Yeom Sung-gi constantly caught her trash talking his dad to her snobby friends. And the literal snake did not even try to hide it. She would actually threaten him right to his face, telling him that if he did not want to get booted out like his mom, he had better keep his mouth shut. She was nothing but a blood-sucking parasite ready to drain them dry. Without caring if she ripped a whole family apart, Yeom Sung-gi just stood there watching her get visibly ticked off. Then he gathered up his guts and straight up asked her how much cash it would take for her to ditch his dad forever. The woman just glared at him, totally caught off guard by the flex. He told her to drop the fake act, because everyone knew she was only riding his dad's coattails for the payout. The stepmom acted totally outraged. Like, who did this edgy brat think he was talking to? But then he dropped an insane offer, the 100 million won his dad had locked away for his college fund. And yep, he knew exactly where the old man stashed the investment ledger. Altogether, that was roughly 1 billion won. The second she heard that number, you could literally see the greedy dollar signs flashing in her eyes. He told her that if she thought he was capping, he would prove it. Still low-key suspicious, the stepmom got up, followed him into the room, and watched him pop open the heavy safe. Up until now, her biggest flex was just scoring some random designer bags, or maybe finessing a piece of real estate in her name. But if Yeom Sung-gi was not bluffing, she was absolutely ready to take the money and run. He cracked the safe wide open and jackpot. Solid gold bars, stacked investment ledgers, and a massive mountain of hard cash. Just to bait the hook, he grabbed a stack and told her that with this kind of dough she could easily dip out of the country and live her best life abroad. But her brain hit the brakes. Something felt super sketchy. Why would he just hand over the bag out of nowhere? Watching from the shadows, Baphomet was absolutely eating this drama up. Looks like even a shallow gold digger had some basic survival instincts. So how was the kid gonna seal the deal? Cue the Oscar-worthy performance. Without even breaking a sweat, Yeom Sung-gi forced his eyes to well up with massive tears, sobbing that he just wanted his real mom to come home, begging that if she packed up and left, maybe his mom would finally return. Honestly, even the demon was hyped by the kid's flawless acting. It was an absolute mastermind move. He played the traumatized little kid perfectly, making the trap look as easy as stealing candy from a baby. Hook, line, and sinker. She snatched up her designer purse and aggressively started stuffing it with bundles of cash. She fell face first into the trap like an absolute clown. And just like that, the ultimate sin of betraying his dad was officially locked in. She frantically demanded the bank and credit card passwords, but his crying stopped. He hit her with a deadpan stare, whispering that she would not need them. Not in the personal hell she was about to check into. The woman spun around, super confused. Just as the mysterious key started glowing with an eerie light, Yeom Sung-gi jammed it into thin air and twisted. Blood-red lightning instantly shredded through the room, ripping a dark portal right open. A bone-chilling click echoed out and the massive gates swung wide. Terrifying scaly tentacles violently erupted from the abyss, wrapping around the screaming traitor to drag her straight down. He dragged her straight down to the underworld as she shrieked in absolute panic, but the heavy door slammed shut, cutting off her screams instantly. Yeon Sung-gi just banished a living, breathing person straight into the abyss. She crash-landed inside a claustrophobic concrete box with zero way out. Suddenly, the walls started grinding together, crushing the space into a suffocating death trap. Baphomet casually watched the whole grim show play out on his screen. The demon asked if Sung-gi wanted a front-row seat to the carnage, but the teen brushed it off, claiming he felt a bit sick. Baphomet smirked, asking if the guilt was finally eating him alive. But the demon was totally caught off guard when this mere mortal just started laughing out loud. Sung-gi quickly threw on his high school uniform. After locking himself away for so long, he looked crazy skinny. The demon stared at him in pure disbelief. It had not even been a full hour since he banished that girl, and he was already locking on to his next victim. Without missing a beat, the boy declared that as long as he held the blade, the hunt was on. After all, an empty underworld was totally pointless. Doing it just for kicks might be a little twisted, but Baphomet could not help but nod along. The agonized screams of the damned gave the abyss its vibe, and packing it with fresh souls sounded absolutely elite. Sung-gi zipped up his backpack, totally locked in and ready to move. He had been ghosting his classes for exactly 3 months, and without a second thought, he stepped out the front door to hunt down the next sinner. Step by step, the realm of betrayal was getting super crowded. This was turning out way more thrilling than he ever expected. Over in classroom 2 row 4, a bunch of kids were already staring out the window. Someone jokingly asked if a literal celebrity just pulled up, but the whispers quickly confirmed that Yeon Sung-gi was actually back. Nobody could believe their eyes, the legend had actually returned to the halls. Wait, didn't he totally drop out? Why the heck is he showing his face again? The rumor mill was working overtime. But the real issue everyone was dreading was that the local school bullies would definitely make him their punching bag again. And, right on cue, those toxic guys were not about to let his comeback slide. Everyone braced themselves as the vibe in the room instantly plummeted. They were low-key dying to see the drama unfold and how his return would shake things up. But Sung-gi had a totally different endgame brewing in his head. Kim Sung-won and his toxic crew kicked the door open, locking eyes on their prey. This idiot actually came back, the boss sneered. They swarmed him heavily, sarcastically whining that he should have dropped a text so they could roll out the red carpet. Watching this, Baphomet totally misread the room, assuming Sung-gi was some kind of popular kid and a total VIP among his classmates. Sadly, that was massive cap. One of the punks aggressively smacked our main guy's notebook right onto the floor. He threw a massive tantrum, yelling that thanks to Sung-gi, his permanent record was permanently trashed. If he was going to cause drama, he had to pay the price. If you do not want to become the main entertainment for this whole class, you better follow us quietly, one of the goons threatened. They dragged him to the boys' bathroom, 5 against 1, what a completely trashy move. The bullies kept whining non-stop about their ruined transcripts, brutally victim-blaming Sung-gi for getting jumped, acting like Sungwon was just some poor unlucky guy caught in the crossfire. Ice cold as always, Sung-gi just stood there in absolute silence, tanking all their pathetic trash talk. And exactly as predicted, a heavy fist smashed straight into his jaw. His quiet vibe was seriously triggering the big guy. Baphomet watched the chaos unfold like he was streaming a hit movie. So this is what mortals call cornering their prey, huh? Well, based on this toxic dynamic, tricking any of them into committing the ultimate sin of betrayal, the demon observed. So, what was Sungi's grand master plan here? He casually wiped the blood off his lip, his brutal goal, crystal clear ship, every single one of them, straight down to the underworld. Just like the demon pointed out, there was zero trust between him and these garbage bullies. So baiting a betrayal sin directly was off the table, but humans have always crafted tools. To take down monsters way bigger than themselves, he just needed to use his big brain to outplay them. And for this hunt, the ultimate weapon to completely wreck them was actually stupidly simple. The whole squad clowned on him as he dug into his pocket, totally expecting him to whip out a knife to save his own skin. But plot twist, he whipped out $5,000, his secret weapon against this crew. Straight up cold hard cash. But bribing these dudes was completely off the table. They'd just jump him and snatch the bag anyway. I will take the beating, it is fine. But you guys are seriously playing dirty right now, he dropped. Baphomet was absolutely living for this drama. Yeom Sung-gi slammed the stack of bills right onto the dirt. Aside from taking the hits, he had just one tiny little request. Kim Sung-won ground his teeth and lunged forward to swing but got yanked back mid-air. The boss barked at him to chill out and listen. Money talks after all. Exactly as our boy planned, they swallowed the bait hook, line and sinker. The leader squatted down, swiping up the cash. He smirked, saying if this kid was tossing around 5,000, like it was pocket change, he was definitely loaded. So, what is the favor, bro? He demanded. Yeom Sung-gi locked eyes with Kim Sung-won. His one request, destroy him. The whole squad immediately whipped their heads toward the dude, who was standing there visibly shook. If that cash was not enough, he had way more stacked in his pockets. Let us absolutely ruin Kim Sung-won. The snake who backstabbed me when we were supposed to be bros, Yeom Sung-gi declared. The trap snapped shut. The hunt was officially on. A dark chuckle echoed out. Maybe this loser actually has some sauce, the leader sneered. He shoved the cash deep into his pocket, totally mocking Kim Sung-won for his pathetic attempt at playing innocent. But at the end of the day, they really used to be besties. Consider this a little revenge arc. Just sit back and vibe with the pain for the next few minutes, he added. The massive goon tried to grab the kid, but he effortlessly slipped the grab. Bro, what are you even saying right now? He scrambled to defend his own skin. We were never friends. Why the hell are you trusting absolute trash like Yeom Sung-gi? We are just taxing a buddy. What is so hard to compute here? The leader fired back, completely shameless. Kim Sung-won was totally tripping out. He glared absolute daggers at the guy on the floor. He snatched him right up by the collar, screaming, "Who do you think you are, dragging me into this dumpster fire? And how did he have the absolute nerve to cross a homie like that? Wait, what kind of friend was he even talking about?" But then Yeom Sung-gi smoothly corrected himself. Since they were literally childhood buddies, it was only fair they shared this massive trauma together. The brunette kid completely lost his mind and swung straight for our boy, but got totally blocked. A thug hooked his collar and brutally yeeted him aside. The bag was secured. Now it was time to put in the actual work. He started doing the math, haggling the price per punch to see how many hits equaled 5,000. And Yeom Sung-gi gave it the green light. 500 won a strike. That meant 10 brutal hits. Without wasting a single second, he literally started tallying the blows like a game. So, this was the hype. This is how bullies felt watching someone get utterly destroyed. The smack sounded way duller than he remembered from when he was the one catching hands. Wow, this is dry, he muttered. How the heck did these toxic guys find this entertaining? He slid his hand deep into his pocket to clutch the key, sparking major beef inside the squad and forcing them to snake each other out. Now that is a totally different play than what you pulled with your stepmom, Baphomet observed. Our boy braced himself, ready to pop the portal and steal the spotlight back from the gang. Like they just got violently shocked, every single one of them snapped their heads back to Yeom Sung-gi. They yelled out, demanding what on earth he was doing. Our MC just smirked. It was finally time to see if these tough guys were actually built for this. He jammed the key in and the portal violently ripped open. He spun around just as the massive iron doors creaked open. Those freaky shadow tendrils whipped out, snatching the bullies one by one and dragging them straight into the abyss. But of course, one of those losers was desperately clinging to the edge. Too bad Yeom Sung-gi was absolutely out of mercy. Back at school, this top bully loved acting like a literal demon. Flashbacks of pure hell rushed through our guy's mind. Every single public humiliation, every brutal punch, every twisted mind game. Well, this piece of trash was about to feel right at home. Sung-gi coldly pried the bully's last bleeding finger off the doorframe. And boom, the darkness swallowed him whole. The only guy left standing was Kim Sung-won, literally shaking like a scared little chihuahua. Sungi locked eyes with his terrified ex-bestie. As the heavy silence dropped, our main character slowly closed the distance. While Sung-won stumbled backward in pure panic, Sungi smirked. "Aren't you even a little curious about what just went down?" he whispered. It sounded crazy, but he had literally just cracked open the actual gates of hell. He'd scored the master key just a few hours ago. Shivering, Sung-won begged to know if he was getting a free pass. Right then, nostalgic memories of their childhood hit Sung-gi like a truck. Back when things were actually chill and they were true bros. He snapped back to reality. Who even knew what was going on in this snake's head anymore? But honestly, part of him still saw the kid he used to know. So he decided the brutal beatdowns from earlier were payback enough. Sung-won cried that he never wanted to join in, he was just terrified of the bullies too. Hearing that fake apology actually gave Sung-gi some closure. Maybe, just maybe, they could fix their broken bond. Our guy turned his back to walk away. But wait, the golden key slipped from his pocket, clattering against the concrete. Sung-won stared at it, his greed instantly kicking in as he remembered its insane power. Without missing a beat, the backstabber lunged for the drop and snatched it up. "You absolute moron. Don't act all tough now. After making me take a beating," he yelled. But the second he uncurled his fist to admire his new toy, he froze. It was just a regular rusty house key. Sung-gi had totally baited him with his apartment key. The real ticket to hell was securely gripping in his other hand. Whelp the snake had officially thrown away his only shot at redemption. Down to the inferno of traitors he went. Baphomet started slow clapping. What an absolute cinema of a trap, packed with insane plot twists right up to the final second. But Sung-gi set the record straight that fake out wasn't a trap, it was a loyalty test. He genuinely wanted to spare his childhood bro. Now the ultimate backstabber had hit rock bottom. And in hell, there is no bottom floor. Every single soul down there gets shredded the exact same way. But honestly, things were getting way too boring around here. It was time to dial up the absolute chaos. Later, Sung-gi splashed freezing water on his face, finally digesting his new dark reality. The demon floated nearby, admitting he was totally baffled by this kid. Our guy's mindset was a total puzzle. When he tossed his evil stepmom into the fire, Baphomet thought he was just a cold-blooded edgelord out for revenge. But watching him deal with his schoolmate, he actually showed raw emotion, almost looking sickened by his own actions. Look, a demon is the absolute last entity to judge someone's morals. But this heavy emotional baggage was suffocating. Sung-gi shut off the faucet and told Baphomet to chill out. He wasn't about to let the guilt eat him alive. That gross feeling churning in his stomach. It wasn't pity or remorse. He just felt pathetic for not deleting those toxic fakes from his life way sooner, and for letting them drag him through the mud for so long. This mortal was built different. Baphomet grinned, deeply hyped. He had definitely picked the right host. The sun dipped below the skyline as our boy finally made it back to his crib, though you couldn't exactly call it a normal vibe. I mean, there was literally a massive demon casually sticking its head out the living room window, totally destroying the feng shui. It locked its glowing eyes on an older guy walking into the apartment complex. The second he verified the target, the demon hissed that Sung-gi's deadbeat dad had just pulled up. Our protagonist just stood there, dead silent, gears grinding in his head. Baphomet was absolutely buzzing to see what kind of sick mind game he'd cook up next. Because let's be real, trust was zero here. Sung-gi had been rotting in his room as a total shut-in for 6 straight months. So pulling a basic money trap on his dad was a guaranteed flop. Since the cash he blew actually belonged to his old man, Sung-gi made it crystal clear he wasn't about to waste a trap like that. He knew damn well it would just flop. Suddenly, a heavy click echoed through the room. Someone was unlocking the front door. Stepping right into the apartment, Baphomet was basically begging for a spoiler as the heavy wood creaked open an inch. Turns out Sung-gi's dad ran this sketchy little insurance firm, and they charged absolutely insane premium rates. Basically, the dude made his living by ghosting and denying payouts to people who religiously paid their top-tier policies. His dad stormed in, barking at him, demanding to know who he was whispering to, as if rotting away in his bedroom. Grinding video games 24/7 wasn't pathetic enough. "Are you going totally crazy now?" The old man sneered, spitting out that he was turning into a massive failure exactly like his mother. Sung-gi just stared at the glowing key hidden inside his pocket, then casually tossed it over to Baphomet, like he mentioned before. He didn't even need to waste a trap on his own dad. The guy had literally just scammed another innocent victim. Hearing his son talk back today, the old man wound up to slap some sense into him. But right before his hand could actually connect, Sung-gi triggered the portal. He had spent ages obsessing over why his dad threw his mom away like trash. and why he was constantly so toxic toward his own flesh and blood. Turns out, making a living by scamming people out of their rightful payouts had just made backstabbing second nature to him. The kid gave the key one final twist, and the massive iron gates ripped open once more. His dad stood there utterly clueless, but it didn't take much effort. With a chilling goodbye, another sinner was violently yanked down into the hellscape he had custom built. The old man screamed and begged for mercy, but his son coldly replied that where he was headed, there was zero chance of escaping. The heavy gates slammed shut, leaving nothing behind but faint echoing screams, fading into the void. Baphomet just stood there closely, monitoring the dark prison where the scumbag was banished. But aside from the digital hum of the screen, the bedroom was completely dead silent. Sungi pushed himself up and walked over to a knocked-over picture frame resting on his shelf. It was a faded old family photo. The demon peered at him, asking if his whole revenge arc was finally wrapped up, and what his next move was. He felt incredibly on edge now that his vendetta was done. And then, dropping a massive plot twist nobody saw coming, the kid announced that it was officially time to turn himself in to the cops. Cut to the police station where he dumped the whole insane truth on the officers. Baphomet tagged right along for the ride. Out of nowhere, a dark rift tore open, spitting out one of his underlings. Looks like Lucifer himself was demanding a chat. It was definitely about the brand new layer of hell that just dropped. He hopped up, slicing open his own portal to go face the big boss. The imposing castle of the Underworld King loomed into view, where an elite council of 11 demons was already waiting for Baphomet. The massive doors swung wide, letting him stride into the grand hall. A velvet-smooth voice echoed through the room, purring that all 12 members had finally gathered. That commanding voice belonged to none other than Lucifer himself, the absolute king of hell. The guy was chilling on his dark throne, locking eyes with the master of the 20th hell as he walked in. Baphomet scanned the massive chamber, wildly confused as to why 12 high-ranking demons who absolutely despised each other were all hanging out in one spot. Lucifer ordered him to take a seat, so he strolled over to his designated chair. But right before sitting, he demanded to know what the hell was going on, since he was the last one to show up. Zero patience left, the king barked at him to sit down. A glowing magic circle flared up violently, yanking Baphomet right down into his seat. Everyone was glued to their chairs simply because Lucifer had commanded it. Literally nobody came willingly. It was Gargamel, one of the absolute top-tier demons, who spoke up. Looks like they were about to hash out some brand new rules for the underworld, a topic that left every single demon in the room visibly pissed off. The king loudly declared that he had personally handed each of them the ultimate power to build their very own customized hellscape. But just like any sketchy fine print, he never actually promised they would permanently own the realms they built. Basically, he never guaranteed that their little pet projects would ever be recognized as official hells. A female demon named Lizanne jumped into the argument, pointing out that the hells they slaved over would just end up being their own massive headache to manage, without even getting the prestige of an official title. Spot on, Lucifer smirked. And the wildest part, not a single one of these demons built their personal hell solo. Every last one of them had headhunted a messed up human to help design their underworld. Baphomet low-key thought he was the only mastermind with that kind of big brain. But honestly, it tracked. I mean, the most epic hellscape ever forged was the Inferno of Disbelief, masterminded by Dante, a literal human. Suddenly, a freaky floating eye darted around, twitching like it was desperate to speak. That was Asmodeus, another top-tier demon lord, and he was practically begging to know what Lord Lucifer was plotting. The devil's answer was brutally simple. He would crown the sickest, most twisted hell to become the official underworld. And the losers completely wiped from existence. The whole room totally froze, because their worst nightmare was actually happening. Lucifer was setting up a savage battle royale between the hell creators. Meanwhile, flashing back to the precinct, Yom Sung-gi was chilling in the interrogation room. He literally walked right into the tiger's den to throw the cops off his scent, filing a fake missing persons report for his dad and his stepmom. But things went completely sideways. See, another report had just dropped about a whole squad of school bullies vanishing into thin air. Their hysterical parents were basically crying for the cops to find them. So do the math, 6 people getting wiped off the map in the exact same neighborhood in 24 hours. And our boy Sung-gi was the one and only red thread connecting them all. So why didn't he play it safe? Why speedrun this whole revenge plot all at once? In literally a day or two, the answer was stupidly simple. Because the cops had zero actual proof to pin it on him. Sure, he knew the victims, but there wasn't a single living soul on Earth who actually saw him rip open the literal gates of hell. Plus, there was absolutely zero physical evidence. No murder weapons, no dead bodies, nothing. Yeah, having a connection to a missing person is sus. But the justice system can't just lock a guy up on pure vibes alone. Sung-gi smirked. He knew he was walking out of there any second. Outside, the rookie cop was losing his mind, telling his boss that despite sweating the kid out, they had absolutely squat. No dirt on the boy at all. What was their next move? I mean, how could a high school amateur scrub the crime scene so flawlessly, without dropping a single breadcrumb of evidence? Our hands are tied. We gotta cut him loose, muttered the grizzled Chief Detective Park Sang-sik. But before letting him walk, the chief needed a private chat. He signaled his rookie to kill the mics. He pushed into the interrogation room, hit Sung-gi with a fake, heavy sigh, and actually apologized for the whole ordeal, acting totally gutted about the parents vanishing. Detective Park then tossed out his bait, claiming he was just doing his job. He even insisted he knew the kid wasn't a killer. Sung-gi just sat there stonewalling him. Because realistically, he didn't murder anyone. He just dragged them down to hell. Suddenly, his blood ran cold when he heard his own voice echo in the room. Wait, did he just say that out loud? He swore it was just an intrusive thought. But then he looked up. The detective was dangling this bizarre glowing key, an exact copy of his own hell key. Park Sang-sik smirked. Gotcha, surprised kid. Mind blown. Turns out Sung-gi wasn't the only main character handpicked by a demonic overlord. The kid was utterly shell-shocked. This plot twist came completely out of left field. The detective chuckled, saying he was just as shook. He honestly didn't expect the kid to self-snitch so easily. He stepped into Sung-gi's personal space while our anti-hero's brain was basically short-circuiting. The old man's sixth sense was terrifyingly sharp. Sung-gi panicked. Did this guy corner him because he already knew the truth? Or was it just a lucky gamble to catch him slipping? But whatever the reality was, the tension was insanely thick as they locked eyes. Sung-gi's dark side flared up. If push came to shove, he'd happily banish this veteran cop to hell, right alongside the bullies. Framing this guy for the sin of betrayal, piece of cake. Boom, the air cracked open as a demonic portal spawned out of nowhere. Baphomet just casually crashed the interrogation, and directly across the room, a second portal ripped through reality, spitting out Gargamon. Sung-gi's jaw dropped at the double demon feature. Well, look who it is, Gargamon sneered. Well, look at that, their hand-picked humans just crashed right into each other. The masked demon smirked, tossing out that it was cool they reunited, and all but Baphomet seriously needed to leash his little pet. Because his edgy little nerd looked dead set on ripping open the gates of hell at any second. The horned demon just chilled his human out. The real games hadn't even kicked off yet. Yom Sung-gi, completely lost, demanded to know what on earth was going on. Finding out there were other twisted humans just like him, total mind-blower. Baphomet shot back, admitting he was just as blindsided. But turns out he wasn't so special. The other demons were totally piggybacking on humans to craft their own personal hellscapes too. And out of the 12 hells forged, only one gets to snatch the ultimate crown. A literal death game was brewing. Gargamel nudged the detective to just let the kid walk for now, because tossing him back into the wild meant he'd clash with other players doing their dirty work and thinning out the competition. The detective shrugged, admitting he was already planning to drop the charges anyway, because legally, there was zero chance to actually pin the kid's crimes on him. Plus, the cop was flexing hellish powers himself, making him just as guilty as Yom Sung-gi. Baphomet chimed in. They were just humans at the end of the day, which made them super useful pawns. But Gargamel was spitting facts, blowing all their powers this early total rookie move. It had wrecked their survival odds, making it impossible to reach the endgame. So, wrapping things up, Baphomet still had a massive info dump to unload on his human. The detective swung the door open, and the two of them just dipped out together. Yom Sung-gi absolutely losing it over the fact that he wasn't the only chosen one out there. Meanwhile, back in the room, the guy standing there told Park Sang-sik to chill. No need to sweat it. Their personal hell was miles ahead of those other two scrubs. The game plan right now, just treat the rest of them as living meat shields, and absolutely crush them whenever the time is right. Park Sang-sik locked in, swearing he'd do whatever it takes to survive this bloodbath. Because surviving was the only way to forge a truly righteous society. Cut to nighttime with Yom Sung-gi finally dragging himself back home. He face-planted onto his bed, completely rattled. That detective dude hadn't just sniffed out his secret powers. He was literally another hell creator. The kid freaked out, screaming about how he could have been locked up or worse. Dragged straight down to hell. Baphomet rolled his eyes, telling him to quit being so dramatic. After all, the idiot practically gift-wrapped himself for the cops in the first place. Yom Sung-gi instantly played the victim, raging at Baphomet for leaving out the tiny detail that there were other chosen humans. But before he could spit out another whine, the demon snatched him by the face and slammed him hard against the wall. The kid seriously needed to watch his mouth. He wasn't barking at some low-level imp. This was a high-tier demon who could snatch his soul in a split second. The boy gulped, completely terrified, and Baphomet finally let him drop. Truth was, The demon was just as pissed. He had zero clue that Lucifer had secretly greenlit the other demons to forge their own hells too. And he definitely didn't know they'd be throwing all 12 into a bloody battle royale to crown the ultimate winner. His absolute rage over Lucifer's shady move was practically radiating off him. Trembling Yom Sung-gi asked about this twisted death game, wanting to know if the only rule was just trying not to die. Baphomet sneered, asking if this frail human honestly believed he had what it takes to survive. But before dreaming of endgame, the kid needed to learn the actual rules and figure out what actually went down during that police interrogation. The demon agreed to catch him up, promising to give him a front row seat. He jammed 2 fingers straight toward Yom Sung-gi's eyes, making him shriek in pure agony. Unfortunately for our boy, this brutal crash course was way faster than just explaining it. Everything pitched to black. Then a blinding light pierced the void, and a man's silhouette started taking shape, right in his line of sight, out of absolutely nowhere. Lucifer himself was standing right there. Yom Sung-gi could see every insane detail play out, literally feeling like he was standing right in the room. Someone threw their hand up, hyping up Lucifer's bloodthirst like it was a total genius move. That hype man Aemon the Flaming Eagle? But to actually prep for this war, he went on. They gotta know the rules of this twisted game. Lucifer actually paused, mulling it over. What he really craved was watching these chosen humans tear each other apart and drag each other straight to hell. None of you know the specific sin tied to each other's personal hell, and neither do your little human pets, so pull their strings. Manipulate your chosen ones into setting brutal traps to drag their rivals down here. Basically, it's a massive blind game of cat and mouse where you have zero clue who your enemies actually are, and the last one breathing takes the crown. Another demon chimed in. Lucifer smirked, totally vibing with that idea. This way, he could finally witness whose hell reigned supreme, and just how sick and twisted a human imagination could truly get. Another demon shot a hand up, asking if there were any hidden catches. The king laid down the absolute law. 0 demonic powers allowed to bail out their humans. Literally any other dirty trick was fair game, as long as the humans were the ones dragging each other down into the abyss. The vision shattered like glass, snapping him back to reality. It all clicked. This was a literal death game because stepping away wasn't an option. Even if he refused to hunt, a target was already painted on his back. Baphomet nodded heavily, admitting he was trapped in the same boat. Demons were chained by contract to their respective hells, so when the dust settled on the human bloodbath, every demon except the winner would be wiped from existence. That was a heavy pill to swallow. But honestly, Yom Sung-gi couldn't care less if Baphomet got dusted. Even if he ended up rotting in some rival's hellish landscape, he'd just chalk it up to pure karma. Only one burning question kept eating at him, so he locked eyes with Baphomet. What happens to the scum trapped in my hell if I get locked up in someone else's? The answer was brutally simple. They would instantly cease to exist. Well, that totally trashed any easy way out. Yom Sung-gi had to go all out now because there was no way in hell he was letting those locked-up scumbags get the luxury of a peaceful death. Baphomet literally shivered. The human he picked was absolutely unhinged. He wasn't fighting tooth and nail to save his own skin. He was surviving purely to guarantee his prisoners kept burning in agony, architecting endless, agonizing torment. That was the literal definition of hell. He wasn't about to watch his masterpiece of pain crumble to dust. Crazy or not, Baphomet was hyped to have this psycho in his corner. Suddenly claiming the throne of a brand new underworld didn't feel like a pipe dream anymore. The demon extended a clawed hand, officially crowning him as his partner in crime. They shook on it, but out in the shadows, eyes were already glued to them. Sodius and his human say were perched on a rooftop, tracking their every move from a distance. The countdown to the bloodbath had officially started. Yom Sung-gi scribbled the rulebook down on a scrap of paper. It all boiled down to 4 golden rules. Rule number 1. You win the second you lock your rival creator in your hell. Rule number 2. Your demon can back you up, but absolutely 0 magic allowed. Rule number 3. Anything goes. Total anarchy. And rule number 4. The slaughter doesn't stop until only one stands alive, unless Lucifer gets bored and throws in wildcards. Those were the terms, which brought up his very first question. Exactly how much could these demons actually help? Aside from your authority power, what else can you freaks actually do, Yom Sung-gi asked. See, the authority was the standard issue power Lucifer handed out to his generals, giving them the juice to rip through portals, blast hellfire straight from their bodies, and boss around the lower tier fiends. But peeling back that basic authority buff, every single demon held a one-of-a-kind skill up their sleeve, a natural talent they were literally born with. Yom Sung-gi leaned in, a dark curiosity brewing. and demanded to know what innate ability Baphomet was hiding. The demon locked eyes with him and smirked. I can smell death before it even happens. Ever since he was a kid, he possessed this wild, instantly zeroing in on people standing at death's door and literally escorting them straight down to hell. Hooked on the details, our boy asked for a deep dive into how this insane power actually worked. But out of nowhere, ding dong, the doorbell cut him off. Yom Sung-gi wasn't exactly expecting company. He flicked on the intercom monitor only to spot some random girl just chilling on his front porch. Staring into the camera, she casually whispered that she had a little surprise to show him. Totally clueless about her vibe, he awkwardly mumbled an okay. And right on cue, this chick completely went rogue and started unbuttoning her shirt on camera. Completely caught off guard, Sung-gi snapped, asking what the hell she was doing and threatened to call the cops if she didn't bounce. He slammed the intercom off. Baphomet peeked out from the bedroom, and suddenly this heavy, suffocating fog completely flooded the apartment. It was that unmistakable stench of pure death the demon had literally just warned him about. The crazy girl at the door wasn't just pulling a prank. Our guy flinched for a second, but then his big brain energy instantly kicked into overdrive. He's been a total shut-in. He definitely hadn't triggered any real-world beef that would send a hitman to his doorstep, which meant only one thing. This chick was 100% another hell creator. Outside, Heo Min-chae smugly pulled a glowing key from her pocket. Sung-gi's flustered reaction was the exact cheat code she needed to trigger her sin of lust, slipping the key away. Her only objective left was to breach that door, raid the apartment, and drag her target straight down to the underworld. Just to be safe, she double-checked with her demon. Sadius just gave a cold, silent nod. Yep, her tracking skills were absolutely top tier. She had hunted down a rival creator way faster than anyone, and since he was too chicken to step outside, she just needed. Gripping a massive sledgehammer, Min-chae went totally unhinged, violently bashing it against the metal door. Inside, Sung-gi was practically sweating at the absolute audacity. This crazy girl was literally hammering his front door to pieces. He needed a counterattack strategy and fast, because her hell key was fully charged and ready to go. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots. Her flash on camera proved her deadly sin was lust. Bang, bang. The relentless smashing echoed through the hall. He clutched his own key tight, desperately trying to cook up a survival plan. When he answered that buzzer, he had zero clue he was dealing with another player in this twisted death game. He was totally caught lacking. Could that interaction somehow count as triggering his own sin of betrayal? Baphomet quickly shut that down, explaining her cheap little stunt was way too basic to qualify as a real sin. To actually prime his key, the target literally has to shatter their deepest loyalties, obviously. Some random trashy intercom prank didn't even come close to a true betrayal, no matter how hard she tried. The laws of the underworld weren't exactly known for being easy mode. Yet Sung-gi's vibe was chillingly calm. Baphomet raised an eyebrow, asking if his host actually had a hidden trump card to play. Smash. Another brutal strike shook the hinges of his apartment. If she's already charged her key and is dead set on forcing her way inside, our boy muttered slowly, creeping toward the entryway until he was standing directly behind the rattling door. He had to play the ultimate mind game, tricking her into believing he'd instantly nuke her the millisecond that door swung open. Sliding down to sit against the wood, he loudly warned the psycho outside that crossing his threshold meant an instant one-way ticket to hell. The warning glitched her brain for a hot second, but deciding he was totally capping, she just went back to bashing the lock. Her relentless attack essentially confirmed his theory. She was brute forcing her way in precisely because her trap conditions were locked in, ready to unleash her personal domain of suffering. With one final sickening crunch, the doorknob completely snapped off. Sung-gi hit her with a second ice-cold warning. Take one step inside, and you're diving headfirst into my trap. Min-chae absolutely did not see that coming. He wasn't crying for mercy. He wasn't even cowering in a closet. Wait, is this dude actually for real? She hesitated. And just like that, she swallowed the bait hook, line, and sinker. Smirking behind the broken door, he taunted, "Wanna find out? Why didn't he just run?" Instead, he stood his ground and declared that his domain was the hell of invasion. It was a bold claim. She peered through the shattered peep, and they locked eyes. Honestly, it was a massive bluff on his part. But he had to play the terrible hand he was dealt. Nowhere in Lucifer's rulebook did it say a player couldn't lie straight to someone's face about their own trap. Baphomet watched him with absolute respect, in literally 0 seconds flat. He had already cooked up a mental trap, but as a ridiculously smart player, Yu Min-chae absolutely knew there was a huge chance he was capping. The odds of him faking it were easily over 90%. But what if he wasn't? What if she actually kicked that door open and instantly triggered his death trap? Flashing through that brutal scenario, she decided she definitely didn't want her game to end here. Dead silence choked the hallway. as she mentally calculated every single outcome. Option 1, shove her key into the lock and activate her own hell, but doing that might instantly trigger his condition right back at her. Option 2, total retreat. But if she backed off now, the element of surprise was totally cooked. Seung-gi would definitely remember this ambush, and he'd figure out exactly how her trap worked. Basically, a walking checkmate. Both choices were incredibly risky. So what was her play here? It felt like Seung-gi was literally reading her mind, casually calling out every single hesitation and doubt spinning in her head. Then he dropped a bombshell offer that supposedly helped them both a temporary alliance. She actually scoffed at that. Like, be for real, only one person is making it out of this death game alive. So even if they squatted up now, a backstab was completely inevitable. But Seung-gi kept pushing, asking if she seriously thought she could solo all 10 of the other players by herself. That reality check made Min-chae freeze up. She definitely couldn't just spam the exact same ambush tactic she used today on the rest of the lobby. Plus, what if he ended up teaming up with someone else instead? He could totally leak her secret condition to the entire server. If he did that, her stealth attacks would be completely useless. Sweating bullets, she asked her demon sadist for a lifeline. But her demon was absolutely useless, admitting he had zero clue what the right move was. Not giving her a single second to breathe, Seung-gi slid her his phone number. He told her if she was actually down to team up, all she had to do was call him. That way she wouldn't step into his so-called hell. And since she literally busted his door, the cops were definitely on their way right now. So she needed to dip fast. Still insanely suspicious, Min-chae whipped out her phone and saved the number he gave her. Things definitely weren't going her way today. Clearly, she was dealing with a top-tier mastermind on her exact level. He kept the intense stare going until she vanished. Then he instantly dropped the tough guy act. The games had literally just started, and he was already an inch away from getting wiped out. Baphomet chimed in, guessing there must be some demon out there, with a built-in radar to track other users. But more importantly, Seung-gi totally clutched up and deserved a medal. His insane quick thinking had even surprised a literal demon. They kept plotting their next big brain moves. Later in the game, Seung-gi was busy tweaking his hell's settings when his phone lit up with a text. Min-chae caved. She agreed to the alliance, at least for now. Staring at his screen, he realized surviving day 1 was already a massive win. Because here's the ultimate plot twist. If she leaked their team up or exposed his power, Seung-gi would instantly trigger his actual trap, the Hell of Betrayal. That move, absolute genius. Meanwhile, over at the police precinct, Detective Park Sang-sik was digging deep into some highly classified files. He was completely zoned and staring at the screen, hunting down other creators just like him. Gargamon chimed in, asking if he was flexing his powers for this search. Honestly, not a terrible idea. But the missing persons list was insanely long, meaning, even if he wanted to spam his abilities, it was way trickier than it looked. Suddenly, the office door clicked open, and someone casually asked if the detective was already clocking out. Park snapped back, asking what his rookie assistant was doing here this late. The kid just shrugged, saying he was grabbing some supplies. Tossing his bag into a drawer, the rookie casually dropped a major bomb earlier today. Dispatch caught a wild report about an attempted break-in at Hyun Seung-gi's place. Apparently, some unhinged student tried to raid his house. By the time the cops rolled up, the victim was totally chilling, and the crazy girl had already ghosted. But boom, Park finally had a solid lead. He bet his badge that the girl who went after Hyun Seung-gi was another hell creator. Who knew that random nerd would actually clutch up like this? He barked at the rookie to pull the security footage and ID the psycho girl, who tried to trash the property. But on top of scrubbing the video, the detective had one more favor to ask. He ordered his subordinate to stalk the boys' every move for the rest of the week. But while the players who knew about each other were playing 4D chess deep in another part of the city, the very first elimination just dropped. An old man was shaking on his knees, staring up at a super slick, suited-up guy. It was pretty obvious this absolute menace standing over him was Jam's player. The old man was crying, begging the young dude to spare him, desperately pleading with his demon that he wasn't the type to commit any actual sins. But the guy in the suit just closed the distance, coldly whispering that sometimes just existing is a sin. The mere fact this old guy was wasting oxygen living such a trash life was something the suited man simply could not vibe with. Even as the old guy sobbed for mercy, the massive gates of hell cracked wide open and instantly vacuumed up his soul. His demon started fading away, scoffing that Jam just got lucky this time. But before it could finish trash-talking, the human literally stomped on the pink demon's head, roasting it for being totally useless. Jam stepped in, telling him to chill. Like it or not, The demon he was currently crushing under his shoe was straight out of Hell's upper management. Unbothered, the man slowly turned to Jam, threatening that if he didn't want the same treatment, he better start putting in the work. The half-eagle demon just stared at him, completely shook, wondering if he actually just heard that right. The human quickly backed off though, laughing it off as a joke since they were supposed to be partners. Only 10 players left on the board. If they could hunt down every single one, their perfect utopia would finally become a reality. Fast forward 3 days since the whole Fabiana drama, and Hyun Sung Gi had been hardcore chilling, acting like he was on a paid vacation. Baphomet just stared at him, trying to figure out what kind of big brain strat this human was cooking. 3 days ago, not only did they survive back-to-back attacks from 2 competitors, but they also locked in a super strong alliance. And yet, wildly enough, they had done absolutely zero since then. If they actually wanted to win this death game, shouldn't they be making moves? Hyun Sung Gi sighed, telling his demon he totally got why he was stressed. He wasn't exactly the type to just sit around camping either, so he was definitely feeling restless too. The demon immediately shot back, asking why the heck he looked so relaxed then. Well, first of all, a game like this always snowballs insanely fast near the endgame. By then there's zero time to catch your breath or gather intel. Basically, once the real bloodbath kicks off, sleep is literally off the table. The two of them would constantly be either the prey or the predators. Number 2, if he let himself get impatient and rush things, someone was bound to slip up and make a fatal mistake. After all, there are always those tryhards who'd rather win a single gunfight and end up losing the entire war. So his master plan was to sit back and only launch a counterattack when some sweaty, aggressive player blindly walked straight into one of his traps. Suddenly his phone buzzed. Looks like Yu Min Ah was finally blowing up his line. She immediately started going off on him, annoyed that it had been 3 full days since they teamed up and he had completely ghosted her. He just calmly replied that doing literally nothing was all part of his master strategy. She let out a heavy sigh, totally fed up with waiting for some poor fool to trigger the sin of invasion. She fired off a text complaining that the second he went offline, chaos literally dropped. Apparently, some wild footage just hit the stream. He absolutely had to see this. Heo Min-chae smashed that share button, tossing Yeom Sung-gi the link so he could witness the madness himself. A hype-obsessed streamer going by the name Gagaka flashed across his screen. Right in the middle of his live stream, this dude casually dropped a bomb. He was locked in a game. And not just your average video game. We are talking a full-blown Hunger Games situation, where everyone is flying blind with zero clue who they are actually up against. But since every single player was basically camping, hiding out and waiting for someone else to slip up, the whole thing was dragging. And being a total adrenaline junkie, he signed up for a screaming, blood-pumping deathmatch. So this absolute madman decided to do the unthinkable, dox himself. That way, he would force the game to start letting the other players pick their poison, either pull up and try to snatch his key, or hunt down the targets he exposed. He literally invited every killer to his front door at exactly midnight, pinning his exact coordinates right in the chat. Baphomet and Yeom Sung-gi just stared at the glowing screen, completely speechless. This was exactly the spark he was waiting for. Time to make a move. Honestly, a massive bloodbath like this was the perfect cover to smoke out the other players and thin the herd. Playtime was officially over. Fast forward to a buzzing coffee shop right in the heart of the city. Yeom Sung-gi was chilling, waiting for Heo Min-chae. She strolled up, instantly complaining about her outfit, and fiercely whispered, asking if he picked this crowded-ass spot, just to stop her from jumping him. He shot back, reminding her he literally stepped out of his safe zone to meet up. If anything, he was the one totally exposed without his invasion sin to back him up. She slid into the booth and cut straight to the chase. So what is the play with this streamer's suicide invite? Aside from the clueless normies, you bet every other creator out there saw that clip. At least a couple of players were guaranteed to pull up. So what was the master plan? Yeom Sung-gi's mind was racing. He desperately needed to hide his sin's actual trigger condition from her. Playing it cool, he declared he was in, even if his power was pretty useless on offense. Crashing the party was still a solid way to unmask the competition. Honestly, it was not the worst strategy. All they had to do was lock onto the location the second that address hit the comment section. But before they could even finalize the plot, the vibe totally shifted. Detective Park Song-sik strolled into the cafe, his demon Gargamon trailing right behind him. Yeom Sung-gi's stomach dropped. What the hell was he doing here? Heo Min-chae whipped her head around, locking eyes with a rival player. The older cop flashed them a creepy, knowing smirk, and chuckled about how cute it was that these kids were chilling in plain sight, openly scheming about their next move. For a split second, pure panic washed over the two teens, their eyes darting between each other. The detective was playing nice, but the alarm bells were ringing. How long had this guy been stalking them? And how did he have the guts to just roll up without even knowing their powers? Had he already set a trap that could trigger his key and drag them straight down to hell? The question burned in both their minds. Park Sang-sik casually drained the rest of life. Yeom Sung-gi's iced coffee slammed the cup down and ordered them to drop whatever dumb plan they had cooking. He coldly warned them, take one more step and they would both be taking a one-way trip to hell right here, right now. Meanwhile, over at Gagaka's crib, the clout-chasing streamer was obsessively checking his view count and double-checking his pinned address. Everything was locked and loaded. His demon, Jin Ji-jang, gave him a nervous look asking if they were seriously about to go through with this suicidal stunt. The kid just grinned like a maniac, his eyes wide with hype, confirming they were absolutely full sending it. After all, the hidden cameras were already rolling. Plus, let's be real, Jin Ji-jang's useless ability was not good for anything else, and just like that, the very first massive bloodbath of this death game was greenlit with Gagaka's lethal stage perfectly set. Back at the coffee shop, the three of them were frozen in a deadly standoff. His key was glowing bright red, meaning someone just committed the fatal sin to trigger his power. But when the hell did that happen? Ever since that messed up video dropped the game rules, he had been walking on eggshells, desperately trying to keep his record spotless. 0 sins allowed. Then a flashback hit him. Back at the precinct, his key was totally dead when he whipped it out. So, what if the thing was actually reacting to Hyo Min-chae this whole time, and not him? He locked eyes with the girl across the table, and suddenly the puzzle pieces snapped together. Seung-gi frantically tried to flag Min-chae down, but Park Sang-sik cut him off, clearly itching to drop a bombshell. Ignoring the cop, our boy stood up anyway. The detective shot him one last icy warning, but Seung-gi was not having it. He called out the bluff straight to his face, betting everything that his wild theory was dead on. Here is the play. The shady cop cornered some random guy to trigger a sin using that glitch to slide up on Seung-gi, because if neither he nor Min-chae had any dirt on their hands, the detective was totally faking it. But toss a guilty player into the cafe and boom, everything makes sense. That is exactly why the key lit up here. Plus, Seung-gi never even caught the cop checking his own key once they walked in. Scanning the room, he spotted a super sketchy guy sweating bullets. A few tables over and the service bell was suspiciously untouched. Seung-gi marched straight up to the trembling dude and went for the throat point blank, asking if Park Sang-sik had blackmailed his way into dragging him here. Min-chae slammed her hands on the table, absolutely furious, realizing they had just been played like an absolute fiddle while our boy smugly locked in his master theory. Who the hell do you think you are messing with us like that? She snapped. The decoy guy took one terrified glance at the cop to get the green light, then bolted out the door like his life depended on it. Instead of raging Park, Sang-sik flashed this creepy little smirk, catching Seung-gi totally off guard. The detective chuckled, saying the kid had actually leveled up. Or maybe during their last chaotic run in, Seung-gi was just too traumatized and ended up spilling some massive secrets by accident. Seriously, what kind of sick game is this guy running? But then the cop stood up, brushing it off. Just a little vibe check, he claimed. He was not about to team up with a pair of brain-dead rookies. Even with the whole just kidding act, Seung-gi was not buying his BS for a second. Still flipping to a super friendly tone, the cop asked the duo to chill, take a seat, and actually listen to his pitch. Acting like they were all besties, the dude literally started sipping Min-chae's iced coffee like it was the most normal thing ever. Disgusted, she leaned in and asked the nerd if he was seriously going to entertain this psycho's yapping. After all, the clock was violently ticking. But the only reason Seung-gi had not ghosted this meeting yet was exactly because of that badge. This guy had the ultimate cheat code to track down other hellish players, just like them, straight through the police database. Plus, he could literally just slap cuffs on someone and legally lock them up by abusing his cop powers. Long story short, normal players like them were heavily nerfed, rocking only one superpower, while this detective was basically dual-wielding. Teaming up with the enemy might actually be a big brain move here. And with the massive bloodbath dropping soon, an extra heavy hitter was a must. Seung-gi made his play, declaring he would agree to the squad up but only if the cop dropped his own deadly sin first, demanding a player's deepest secret like that. Not exactly something you just casually leak on a silver platter. Min-chae fired back that rolling together, while keeping your dark past hidden was a massive red flag. But the detective totally sidestepped it. Instead of exposing his sin, he promised to drop some insanely high-tier intel. Hate him or love him, both teens were instantly hooked. The cop leaned in, dripping with suspense, and asked if their current kill count for dragging souls to hell had gone up yet. Let that sink in. Homeboy had already dragged 117 souls straight down to the underworld. Yom Sung-gi and Ho Min-chae are absolutely shook. The drop of that massive kill count hits them like a freight train. They flip out so loud they disrupt the whole coffee shop, forcing them into an awkward apology tour for totally losing their chill. So by farming all those poor souls for the fiery pit, he basically hacked the system. He unlocked the exact mechanics of how those we are talking exact cooldown timers, maximum hit ranges, the whole 9 yards. Even the max capacity for a multi-target strike. And the crazy part, the more victims he stacked up, the more high-tier intel he drained from the game. His pitch, he drops all this premium knowledge on the duo, but only if they squad up for a hardcore alliance during the massive bloodbath going down later tonight. No-brainer, right? They immediately take the deal, shaking on it before dipping out of the cafe. Enter Gargamone. The demon pops back up, side-eyeing Park Sang-sik and questioning if he just spilled way too much tea for a flimsy team-up, especially after grinding so incredibly hard for those stats. But our guy just smirks, telling his pet monster to chill out. He completely rigged the notebook he handed them, the most crucial stats, intentionally flipped. So if those two ever try to pull a fast one, Park Sang-sik is fully prepped to swallow them both whole in one single bite. Cut to nighttime. Dead center of a city park. Yom Sung-gi and Ho Min-chae are on high alert, sweating it out for Gagok's coordinate drop. The clock is ticking 3 hours and 20 minutes until showtime. While they wait in the shadows, it is time to actually strategize and figure out their combat synergy. He pulls Ho Min-chae aside, hitting her with an intense stare, saying he needs some real about her demon's actual toolkit. Like, can she pop her skill right this second? If they ping Gagok's exact spot, they could totally camp the zone and secure a massive tactical advantage over the rest of the lobby. Ho Min-chae does not even speak at first. She just grabs a stray branch and starts scratching a diagram into the dirt. Breaking it down, she reveals her power acts like a proximity radar. It strictly locks onto the absolute closest demon. Basically, she can only scan and track the immediate neighboring player within a very specific area of effect. That is the entire reason she rolled up on him earlier tonight. He just happened to be the unlucky guy triggering her proximity alert. He presses her on the exact cooldown timer for the skill and she admits it is a brutal 12-hour wait for a measly 5-minute window of use. Since she already figured out he was basically camping in his apartment, she has definitely been spamming that radar every 12 hours while roaming the city streets. And honestly, ever since their messy first encounter, she has not dared to approach another single soul. That brutal scrap they had completely traumatized her into playing it. Sung-gi instantly connects the dots. She has definitely pinged other targets on her radar, but she kept those receipts completely hidden. She was gatekeeping that high-tier intel as her own personal trump card. But after he literally dragged her out of the fire back at the guilt trip hits. It is time to pay the piper. Min-chae, her tracking nabbed 2 major blips on the map. One target was pinged right at the airport immigration gate, and the second one, chilling deep inside an executive boardroom, straight up at QS Corporation headquarters. Translation: one of these deadly players is likely an international foreigner, while the other is some high-rolling boss pulling strings at the massive QS megacorp. The ultimate catch, neither of these guys bothered to look into a mirror during her so she has absolute zero idea what their actual faces look like. Panicking a bit, she desperately swears she did not hold this back. Just because she thought he was super sketchy, but because her brain legit just blanked on it. She is practically begging not to shatter their fragile new squad. He tossed her a grateful nod, deciding, so he started spilling the tea on how his powers actually worked. See his summon Baphomet, it had this insane tracking radar. It could literally sniff out the fading scent of a life. For him, it acted like a built-in alarm system going off the second someone was plotting to permanently take another person out. If he played his cards right, the dude could basically see into the future. It was honestly a top-tier skill, especially when comboed with the sin ability of his partner in crime, Ho Min-chae. Since they were finally vibing on the same wavelength and they still had 3 hours left on the clock before the official release, he figured it was best to split up and catch their breath before the absolute chaos dropped. She was totally down for that. Yom Sung-gi promised to shoot over some pics of the detective's notebook so she could prep her own strategy too. He threw up a casual peace sign telling her to stay in the game and survive. Because honestly, neither of them wanted their captives getting an easy out. That dark thought instantly dragged her back to exactly why her sin theme was lust. Flashback to a dim bedroom, a smartphone is propped up on a messy desk, the red recording light blinking. A guy's face pops into frame while Ho Min-chae's voice echoes from the background, anxiously asking. He totally gaslights her, claiming the adrenaline rush would be insane, begging her to just roll with it for him this one time. Fast forward to the next day at school. Two creepy dudes immediately start shadowing her every move, and she opens her locker to find it completely trashed with toxic slurs. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots on who leaked the private footage. Cut back to the present, a sweaty guy is nervously rubbing his palms together. Standing right in front of Heo Min-chae is her absolute garbage of an but she just glares at him ice cold. It was way too late. The damage was done, and her entire family's reputation was reduced to ashes because of his toxic stunt. Snapping back to reality, Heo Min-chae realizes Yeom Sung-gi was 100% right. She couldn't let the targets in her personal nightmare just check out peacefully. The two of them lock in with a quick fist bump, swearing they would survive until the final. Meanwhile, Yeom Sung-gi was already laser-focused, breaking down the detective's notebook and scribbling down his master plan. Suddenly, Baphomet popped up right inside his bedroom. The demon was literally begging his human to stop making him walk everywhere. His feet were absolutely killing him. I mean, come on, the guy was used to instantly warping through portals. Yeom Sung-gi completely shut that down. He told the demon to quit crying about it, especially since other creators could easily spot demons too. So Baphomet had to stay completely off the radar to avoid getting tracked down. But the demon hit him with a reality check. For someone acting so paranoid, wasn't he trusting Sadius's partner a little too much? Sung-gi just brushed it off. He didn't see any issue since he had straight up lied to her about his actual sin. Plus, let's be real. He desperately needed her fire. This whole thing was definitely turning into a numbers game. Other demons were probably out there teaming up and plotting across the city and boom, Sung-gi's theory was dead on. Cut to a random guy casually strolling around with two other demons. This sinister trio consisted of a human vampire and Gordon Kilius, but their dynamic way more toxic than Sung-gi's squad. This was no friendly team-up. Yoon Eun-han was acting like the absolute boss, treating An Eun-hae and Jeon Jong-chul like literal slaves. He was obsessively refreshing Gagaka's livestream, and finally, jackpot. Eun-han snapped his fingers at Jong-chul, tossed the car keys right at him, and barked at him to drive them to the drop zone. He then looked down at the girl kneeling on the ground, coldly telling her she would be the human shield walking into Gagaka's trap first. Eun-hae was terrified, stammering, and asking why she had to be the bait. But before she could even finish her sentence, he shoved a glowing key right in her face. He brutally called her useless, and reminded her that he literally owned her life. She flinched, totally sickened by the threat. It was an absolute nightmare being chained to a scumbag like him. Jong-chul hesitantly spoke up, asking if they would finally be free once this crazy mission was over. Eun-han just smirked. He promised to cut them loose any time, but only if they actually proved themselves useful and stopped dragging him down. And just like that, every single player was speeding toward Gagaka's location. Let the chaos. Under the cover of night, the city looked totally chill. With the crazy daytime city hustle completely dead, Hyun Sung-gi's crew huddled up by an empty parking lot. They were intensely breaking down the intel scribbled inside that notebook the detective handed over. Turns out this crazy portal could only drag a max of 5 people down at once. And once those gates of hell slam shut, the system instantly goes on a strict cooldown. It takes exactly 1 full minute before anyone can pop that thing open again. The absolute max range between the portal and its center, just 10 meters. So even if your target is dead in your sights, if you don't close that gap, they aren't getting sucked in. Hu Mincha suddenly chimed in, dropping a massive detail they totally missed. Even if the key flags someone as a sinner, if the creator themselves doesn't actually recognize that person's sin, the portal won't grab them. Basically, activating this death trap requires 2 massive conditions. First, the target has to be wildly guilty. Second, the creator has to consciously acknowledge that guilt. Man, these guys really did their homework. So the squad's Phase 1, scout out the area and lock on to the other players. Phase 2 was all about digging up any dirty clues tied to their rivals' sins. And Phase 3, survive, all 3 of them. No matter how hyped they were to thin out the competition, making it out alive was the ultimate priority. Hu Minchi practically begged them not to take dumb risks just to chip away at the enemy. But Park Sang-sik wasn't having it. He clapped back, pointing out that dragging other players to hell literally gives, so going out of their way wasn't worth the sweat. However, if a golden opportunity dropped right in their laps to wipe someone out, he wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger. He then tossed a pair of walkie-talkies over to the young couple. This way their comms would be completely locked in, giving them a massive edge to instantly sound the alarm if another user popped up. Meanwhile, a sleek ride slammed its brakes right outside a super high-end luxury hotel. Yoon Han was posted up, intensely tracking enemy movements through a pair of heavy-duty binoculars. His lackeys were whining. Did they seriously have to charge in first? They were completely having zero clue where an ambush might actually come from. Sitting tight felt like the smarter play. Just chill in the shadows and let the other participants reveal themselves. Basically let the other guys eat all the initial damage. But the boss was already super ticked off by their endless complaining. They came here to aggressively slice down the player count as much as humanly possible. Plus, as the crew already knew, Yunonghan had literally just banished another player straight to hell. And there was one massive secret they supposedly unlocked from that kill. He claimed that the second you completely erase a creator by sending them downstairs, the system blesses you with a brand new, overpowered ability. The two goons just stared at him, jaws practically on the floor, if that was actually legit. Scoring an extra skill right off the bat would be an absolutely insane power spike. Because in this game, stacking more cards skyrockets your odds of surviving. In seconds, those two greedy subordinates connected the dots. They realized that if they could somehow secure a kill on another player, they could finally break free from Yunong Han's toxic grip, or at the very least, level up enough to look him dead in the eye as equals. Hook, line, and sinker. They totally fell for his trap like absolute idiots. Completely clueless. Think about it. If a god-tier reward like that actually existed, the Game Master would have hyped it up on day one. Yunong Han casually flashed back to his last bloody show. Right after that terrifying demon completely vanished, he had directly interrogated the soul, asking if there was some kind of hidden bounty for getting the kill. The soul shut that down fast, saying no new rules dropped. And absolutely nothing changed. Meaning, there was zero reason to get his own hands dirty hunting other players. He just needed a galaxy brain strategy pivot. And honestly, his new plan was brutally simple. He was going to use his own two lackeys as pure bait, sacrificing them to whatever new threat had just spawned. By letting them get slaughtered, he could comfortably sit back and analyze every single detail about the enemy's hellish sin. With this setup, he could literally turn this newbie into his own personal puppet, and just rinse and repeat the whole twisted process until the game wraps up. And then just off his final pawn, to crown himself the ultimate survivor. He lets out a fake little cough, desperately trying to keep his absolute smirk in check. Without missing a beat, he starts yapping, gaslighting them into thinking he was just buffing his allies. Now all these guys had to do was slap on their body cams and charge into the war zone. Meanwhile, our guy Gagaka is chilling, monitoring the security feeds. He had rigged up at every major choke point. But then, boom, the glass slides open, and in drops this girl straight up asking if the little kitty cat actually expected her to ring the doorbell, like some polite house guest. Looks like she pulled off this insane entrance using some heavy-duty climbing gear. Her key is glowing red hot, meaning it is officially open season to strike. Yoonhee thrusts the key high, commanding the gates of Vanity's hell to rip wide open. Instantly, a massive swarm of bats materializes around her. Oh, it was totally karma time for this kid. One absolute unit of a bat swoops in, and when it cranks the key with its giant wings, the portal tears open. Creepy ghost hands snatch Gagaka, pinning him down, but out of nowhere, the dude just starts glitching backward, leaving both the human girl and her demon totally shook. Like, what even just happened? The key straight up failing made zero sense. Suddenly, this bone-chilling deep voice echoes from where their target was standing. Yoonhai's jaw literally drops. They didn't just target the wrong guy, because as the disguise peels away, a whole other demon is standing right there. Neither of them even knew this level of trickery was possible, and before their brains could even process the massive L they just took, Gagaka's invasion hell triggers. Toxic green smoke floods the entire room, and hogtied by a mystical rope, the girl and her demon get violently yanked into Gagaka's domain. Then, everything cuts to pitch black. Flashback to a dance studio. You hear a sharp 5, 6, 7, 8 as three girls grind through choreography. Carla is mindlessly scrolling her phone, side-eyeing another group of dancers, crushing it, quietly dreading how much longer she is going to be stuck as a literal nobody trainee. Across the room, a huge uproar breaks out. Some exec loudspeakers that the girl beside him. Yule is officially getting her debut. Unhee is absolutely paralyzed by the news. Like, why is this random chick getting fast-tracked to stardom before the loyal veterans? The guy just shrugs it off, saying it was top brass orders and completely out of his hands. So instead of being salty, why didn't she just go celebrate with the squad? Whether she wanted to accept the brutal truth or not, the news utterly crushed her. That is when someone steps up, offering a tissue. Surprise. It is Yule. Unhai thought the girl was actually feeling bad for her pain, but plot twist. Yule throws immense shade, telling Unhee to try a little harder for the next eval, since you know she has been rotting as a trainee for literally 7 years. She drops the ultimate bomb. Maybe Unhee just totally lacks the talent and should give up on the idol dream entirely. Because honestly, she is getting way too old for it. In that single moment, Yule proves she is a straight-up viper. Cut to a gloomy, rain-soaked convenience store. Yoonhai is downing cheap drinks to drown out the massive betrayal, forced to watch that toxic girl's debut on screen. especially after finding out Yule literally slept with the agency's CEO to steal her spot. Yep, that was her VIP ticket to the main stage. Later that exact night, a blinding supernatural glow floods Eunhai's bedroom, and a stunning, terrifyingly inhuman woman materializes right in front of her. She came bringing a dark deal, and a broken Eunhee just did not have the willpower to say no. Fast forward to now, she thought she secured her revenge, but when she tried dragging him to hell, total fail. Just because this guy was some high-level corporate exec did not mean he had even a shred of humanity, making her entire revenge arc look like a pathetic joke. The dude literally mocks her, claiming that empathy is just for losers. He only operates on cold hard facts. As Eunhee gets violently dragged away into the abyss, she realizes her ultimate mistake. She was wildly delusional for thinking she could ever survive, especially after trusting a monster like him. With the brutal conditions fully met, the gates of hell slam shut. Eunhai is officially eliminated. The second the dust settled, her demon started fading into thin air. Gaga Ka. He was absolutely hyping up this massive win. Honestly, weaponizing Jin Young's ability was a total shot in the dark. Still, my guy was soaking up the praise, since his skills were usually just cheap party tricks to entertain other demons. But now Gagaka was buzzing with pure dopamine, totally obsessed with the outcome and fiending for round 2. Jin Young snapped his mask back on and the duo geared up to ambush their very next target. Outside, a neon green portal flash bled through the window, giving Yun Sung-gi the perfect cue to grab his radio and hit up the squad. That eerie glow, a dead giveaway, it was a player's gateway. Someone had definitely just bitten the dust. Right then and there, Sung-gi's brain went into overdrive, cooking up wild theories. Based on the detective's scribbled notes, whoever popped that portal open and actually clutched the win had to wait at least 60 solid seconds. Should he risk it all and breach the zone? Could he sneak in and out before the clock ran out? But before he could spiral further, a heavy hand slammed onto his shoulder, making him jump out of his skin. He braced for a rogue enemy player. Plot twist, it was just the detective trying to kill that reckless vibe. Rushing in blind, pure suicide mission. So what was the actual play here, Park Sang-sik? Drop the easiest loophole. Just knock and play the concerned neighbor who heard a scream. Sung-gi started to push back, but then the gears finally clicked. The cop was bluffing his way into Gagaka's spot, flashing his actual badge and claiming he got a noise complaint. Whoever survived that last brutal clash, I would definitely hesitate to banish a literal cop to the underworld. Because, if they pulled that trigger, the whole precinct would swarm the building and slap cuffs on them instantly. So Sung-gi and Omin Che's real job, gatekeeping the area and blocking any third-party players, they would figure out a way to deal with whatever monster was lurking inside. With that locked in, he marched straight toward the complex. This detective wasn't just built different with zero fear. His quick thinking under pressure was insanely top tier. The entire reason they had been chilling in the shadows all this time was purely to wait for some random to trigger a turf war so they could crash the party. Still, Sung-gi was sweating bullets, terrified of getting caught and wiped out. Could he really send this creep straight down to hell? Just like they guessed, the first camera feed went totally dark. The girl was already ghosted on his enemy's underworld aesthetic. Tossing the tablet aside, he hyped himself up, declaring it was time to finally make their move. The elevator dinged at floor number 7, right on Gagaka's turf. The detective stepped out instantly, getting caught right on camera by the streamer's hidden setup. The streamer squinted, wondering if this guy was free loot. He definitely did not look like a regular local. Park Sang-sik rolled right up to the door and slammed the bell. The young streamer was practically buzzing with excitement. The door was literally unlocked, basically begging the guy to stroll right in. He slipped, making sure his demon minion was primed to attack. But Park Sang-sik just kept on, pounding on the wood, shouting that he was actual law enforcement, responding to a sketchy noise complaint. Gagaka panicked, realizing it was definitely the insane racket and glowing light from earlier. This was a major red flag. Just like the detective masterminded, the kid fell right into the mental trap. If I drag a cop to hell, I'm getting locked up, but if I open this door, this was basically buying the other players some precious time. The faster they wrap this up, the better. So he straight up marches to the door and hits the detective up to see what kind of intel he actually got. The cop brushes it off like it's no biggie, just a random noise complaint about some girl screaming her lungs out next door, and asks if they can chat for a sec. Meanwhile, our boy Yom Sung-gi is lurking outside, low-key stressing over how he's supposed to gatekeep the whole building from other players. Like, talk about easier said than done, right? But he absolutely had to block them out, so their master plan wouldn't totally tank. He grabs his walkie, hits up Hyo Min Che, and asks if she's spotted. Anything sus going down? She hits him back, saying the coast is crystal clear for now, and checks if the detective is cool. Sung-gi drops the update. The cop went in to press the streamer, meaning he's stuck playing bouncer to keep randoms out. Min-chae promises to stay locked in. Then he drops a wild question. Has she popped her ability yet today? She admits she totally hadn't felt the urge to use it yet, considering she'd been chilling with Sung-gi all day long. So he tells her to activate that power right now because he's cooking up a massive brain strat. What if her skill doesn't just lock onto the closest person, but specifically targets whoever is moving closest to her? Think about it. If she leaves her ability running and an enemy player pushes their spot, her vision target would instantly snap to them. Min-chae is mind blown. She'd never even thought about flexing her power like a radar before. I mean, every single time she used it before, it was strictly a one-on-one vibe, letting her swap targets every 5 minutes max. If his massive brain theory was legit, it would be the ultimate hack to filter out actual players from everyday NPCs walking by. And since this streamer complex wasn't just a regular apartment block, someone could easily sneak in cosplaying as a delivery driver or a tenant. But if this cheat code worked, they'd spot the ops way before they even got exposed setting up. The perfect window for a brutal ambush. She snatches the walkie, hops off the ledge, and calls out her status. The clock was ticking and it was officially go time. The exact second her power went live. First, she caught a glimpse of Sung-gi's hand, but just like his big brain theory predicted, her vision aggressively started shifting. She frantically pings Sung-gi. Those two random dudes pushing the building right now. Yeah, they're both players. He instantly asks if it's a duo or just a solo, but since her vision is violently glitching back and forth between them, it's basically guaranteed that both are ops. Now Sung-gi is in a massive bind. If it was just a 1v1, he could totally find a way to clap them. But a full duo, that makes things insanely messy. Because there was zero chance of drafting a strat where both of these guys would trigger the sin of betrayal. And even if he somehow styled on one of them, the second guy could absolutely end his run. He desperately needed to lock in and stay cool. These guys still had no clue he was an actual hell creator. So he kept that filthy element of surprise tucked up his sleeve. The moment he steps into view, the two dudes instantly start sweating, wondering if he's a player or not. Just as scripted. He wanted to keep normal NPCs completely out of the crossfire. Meanwhile, Sung-gi is having an internal crisis on whether he should keep playing dumb as a clueless tenant, because even if things went totally south for the detective inside, he still had Min-chae holding it down. He flashes back to every single clutch moment in his life, realizing that running away was always just him taking the easy way out. But he was so freaking done with dodging his problems. The guy clenches his fist, completely zoning out in his thoughts. He snagged the key to hell specifically to make bad people pay, and yet here he was again, trying to ghost the situation. Sung-gi stands dead still as the duo closes in, and finally he completely locks in his choice. He throws his hand up, completely blocking the entrance. The two guys freeze in their tracks, looking totally clueless. Okay, he bought some time. But what the heck is his next move? His game plan: keep running his mouth so these dudes don't have a single second to process what's happening. It was a total battle of wits. Yoon Eun-han narrows his eyes, wondering if this kid is some secret backup for Gagaka. But he quickly shuts that idea down. The streamer's hell was all about invasion, so that didn't add up. There was zero reason to block them here, which meant this guy probably belonged to a completely different rival faction. Still, even that theory felt kind of sketchy. Labeling this dude as a player didn't exactly match his weird behavior, but if he wasn't playing the game, why the hell was he guarding the door? Out of nowhere, the kid claims they're locking down the building because of a police tip. Someone reported a woman screaming on the 7th floor. Yoon Eun-han grits his teeth, completely blindsided. A noise complaint from a neighbor. He hadn't factored that in at all. But honestly, the timing made perfect sense. Some random local definitely called it in, right after hearing An Eun-hee screaming her lungs out before dragging her to hell. So naturally, the real cops showed up to secure the perimeter. If that's true, it opens up two very different scenarios. Yoon Eun-han glares at Yeom Sung-gi, his suspicion hitting maximum overdrive. Because let's be real, this kid did not scream undercover cop. He was way too scrawny. And the buckets of sweat dripping down his face, super sus. But before Yoon Eun-han can actually call his bluff, Yeom Sung-gi pulls an insanely bold move. If you're gonna lie, you gotta gaslight yourself into believing it first. The businessman steps up, trying to interrogate this so-called detective's assistant. But before he can even get a word out, Yeom Sung-gi whips out a walkie-talkie and broadcasts the lobby situation directly to Gagaka. Upstairs, Park Sang-sik hears static crackle to life. It's Yeom Sung-gi warning him about two residents trying to push their way inside. The kid breaking radio silence first, That was a massive red flag. Things were getting dangerous. It was time to bounce. He grabs his mic. I'm heading down right now. He smoothly fakes it, claiming the original noise complaint was just someone streaming a crazy loud horror game or something. The two guys are totally thrown off. The kid wasn't capping after all. Our MC is an absolute beast at thinking, on his feet and plotting out galaxy brain strategies under pressure. Checkmate. If his opponent couldn't keep up with this pacing, they'd just be left in the dust. He tells the guys the building will be cleared out in a sec, and asks them to chill for a minute. Right on cue, Park Sang-sik steps out of the elevator acting like everything is completely fine, and hits them with a polite apology for holding up the line. Flashing his fake detective badge before sliding it away, he waves them inside. All clear, you're good to go. Yoon Eun-han is slightly rattled, but he still knows all about Gagaka's hell, so he sticks to the script and pushes forward with his master plan. Playing it cool, he thanks the fake detective for his hard work, casually dropping that the neighborhood has been crazy loud lately. The two finally slip past them, making a beeline for the elevator. The second they're out of earshot, Park Sang-sik turns to the kid. Were those two creators as well? And how did he even spot them? Yeom Sung-gi smirks. Ho Min-che's crazy abilities tipped him off. Those guys were definitely hostile. Then he switches gears, asking about the main streamer target. The older guy sighs, admitting that sadly. Gagaka hadn't been banished to hell just yet. But hey, huge silver lining, thanks to the kids backing him up, they actually tracked down 2 brand new players. That bumps their total up to 7 confirmed targets. And one of them was the exact same girl, who just got swallowed whole by the YouTuber's hell. Honestly, for a single night of grinding, this was a massive win. Now the real survival game was officially kicking off. This was the first time so many players were thrown into the exact same spot, face to face, exactly like they planned. Their squad had successfully farmed all the intel they needed. Meanwhile, a sharp buzz echoes from the doorbell. It's Yoon Eun-han, and he's got a very interesting deal to pitch to our streamer businessman. He straight up suggested Gagaka become his personal lapdog. The kid just fired back, asking if the guy had totally lost his mind. Smirking from outside the door, the suit casually dropped that the dude Gagaka just flatlined was actually one of his own mutts. And as long as he didn't step inside, the invasion hell couldn't trigger. You could literally hear the smug, victorious smirk on his face. Inside, our boy was absolutely blindsided. If this psycho wasn't capping what was stopping the streamer from just locking down and never touching grass again, the businessman brushed it off like it was nothing. He'd just have some goons camp his door, stalking him 24/7. The second he stepped out, boom, a personal VIP beatdown. But let's play devil's advocate and say he actually never leaves. How long could he realistically survive on his current stash, assuming he ghosted every food delivery app? 2 months tops. Maybe 4 if he literally starved himself. The kid had basically locked himself in his own self-imposed prison. But plot twist. Instead of rolling over and taking the L, Gagaka went full rebel mode, dead set on rotting in that room. The absolute psycho actually shivered, totally hyped by the breaking him down until he crawled out was going to be a total blast. As the creep finally dipped, Gagaka started cooking up a brand new game plan. He brainstormed with his demon. But unlike our boy, the shadow monster was completely doomed, and it questioned if stalling like a coward was even worth it since they weren't actually fixing the mess. But Gagaka fired back. If they just bought enough time, some other heavy hitter might swoop in and drag that suit straight down to hell. They just needed to hold the line a little longer. Spoiler alert though, that strategy crashed and burned in less than 7 days. Every single takeout order they snagged showed up packed with literal garbage. They hit up the cops more than 3 times, but the boys in blue just brushed it off as a prank. Right after that, boom, the power got completely sliced. Then the apartment's water supply got insanely toxic. The crushing paranoia of the enemy breaching the door at any second morphed into pure, unadulterated insomnia. Just when stepping outside felt like the ultimate craving, a sleek business card slipped silently under his door. "Hit us up when you are ready to tap out," it read. And just like that, the streamer swallowed his pride and accepted defeat. Cut to a perfectly sunny day high up in the lavish CEO suite of QS Corporation. Yoon Eun-han was chilling, waiting for Gagaka, but from now on, he was officially his obedient little lapdog. Meanwhile, deep in some sketchy Korean factory, a guy was screaming his lungs out, sprinting for his life. A player and their demon were hot on his heels. The stalker, rocking a creepy Friday the 13th Jason mask, lunged in for the kill. He coldly reminded the terrified dude on the floor that he had already offered him 2 simple options. Option A, get dragged straight down to hell. Or Option B, die a brutal death right here by his hands. Reaching into his... The guy in white was completely losing it. No matter what it was, game over for him. The key suddenly flared with a sick glow, proving the activation conditions were fully locked in. Well, since the coward refused to pick his poison, the Hell Creator decided to make the choice for him. Time for a one-way trip to hell, he teased, flashing a twistedly cute wink. Slowly, a nightmare-inducing portal began tearing open right in front. Sickening fleshy tendrils whipped out, wrapping around the guy, and the masked killer watched his own demon stomp closer and playfully snuggled up against its massive frame. Looks like somebody is a little obsessed with dark romance. The imposing Black Knight rumbled that he actually enjoyed his master's little human hobbies. But he dropped a harsh warning. If they didn't start hunting down actual players ASAP, he was going to have to severely punish him. The masked dude just nodded. He promised to drop the basic human hunt and finally target the real prey, the Hell creators. Fast forward 10 days since this sick survival game kicked off, and 5 days since that intense showdown with Gagaka. Hyun Sung-gi decided it was time to grind, throwing himself into intense training to prep for the long, brutal war ahead. He dialed in his macros and completely fixed his sleep schedule. Meanwhile, he and the detective went full Sherlock, digging up dirt on those two shady guys, the ones who ambushed them that fateful night. And after massive digging, they finally hit the jackpot and scraped together some solid intel. Turns out, one of the targets was a top-tier director at QS Corporation named Yoon Eun Han, a certified prodigy who totally finessed his way into power. At 31. As for the other dude, he hit a total dead end, trying to dig up dirt. But one thing screamed obvious: this guy wasn't just your average Joe. Plus, he was totally pulling the strings from the shadows, making him a massive threat on the board. If they didn't wipe this dude off the map fast, he'd definitely drag the entire squad down with him. Park Sang-sik locks eyes with Sung-gi, totally convinced this whole mess made perfect sense. The guy was absolutely loaded and dripping with social clout. Throw some next-level brainpower into that mix, and they were looking at a living nightmare. Player number 2, Jung Jung-chul, a basic architect with absolutely zero red flags. Yoon Young-han was probably breathing down his neck, using him as a pawn to build up his little empire. Because back when the detective actually crossed paths with this architect dude, the guy literally kept his mouth zipped shut. He was shaking in his boots, too terrified to even breathe without Yoon Young-han's green light. Honestly, that tiny detail was pure gold. It was the perfect crack in the armor to absolutely wreck their little team up. Kim Sung-gi gives the detective a solid nod for the fresh intel, and dips out. But Park Sang-sik couldn't help but stare. The kid had completely leveled up. He radiated this hardcore, hardened vibe now. Sung-gi just shrugs off the praise, admitting his headspace wasn't as totally trashed anymore. Back in the day, the thought of surviving past his brutal payback left him entirely empty. But now, that baggage was gone. Crashing at his place, Sung-gi finally exhales. Baphomet, though, tilts his head, wondering, shouldn't they just go on a wild slaughter spree and thin out the herd? Sung-gi shoots that down, quoting some old-school human logic. The whole war is literally won or lost before a single punch is even thrown. And right now, the entire game hinged entirely on how much deep lore you could hoard about your enemies, and keeping your own secrets buried in the dark. Going in guns blazing like a total amateur. Big mistake. Especially when second place gets a one-way ticket to literal hell forever. You had to chill out, stack your cards right, and brace for the absolute bloodbath about to drop. Baphomet switches gears, asking what Heo Min-chae was up to. Sung-gi mentions she is basically playing Shadow, stalking the competition, at least twice a day. Out of nowhere, his phone starts buzzing like crazy. He picks up, but before he can even drop a hello, she cuts him off, whispering she locked onto a target. Sung-gi's eyes go wide, where, right in the middle of Myeongdong, she breathes. She was hyped to ping the detective, thinking this was their golden ticket to corner the guy. But Sung-gi instantly shoots it down. Too damn risky, he snaps. Just scan him for weak spots and hold your ground. But she wasn't having it. This wasn't some sketchy back alley, it was a packed shopping district. The guy was a sitting duck. Plus, she was totally in stealth mode. Since this absolute clown had zero clue she was actually playing the game, it was the most insane opening. To completely blindside him. Sung-gi hated to admit it, but her logic was totally bulletproof. Still, the danger levels were absolutely off the charts, mostly because they practically knew nothing about this creep. But before he could spit out another warning, she straight up ghosts him. Heo Min-chae was so totally sick of playing a game of hide-and-seek. Just spawn killing these losers right out of the gate sounded way better. Suddenly, her target starts slipping down a sketchy alleyway. Off the main strip. Jackpot. This creep is totally about to pop his lust sin, she thought, smirking. She tucked her key away just to play it safe, but the second she rounded that corner, pure shock. Her target was frozen like a statue, and when he snapped his neck around, his face was an absolute horror show of jagged scars. Jeon In-han. This psycho knew she was tailing him the entire time, and, even staring right at her, that stupid lust key didn't even spark. He launched at her like a rabid beast and completely leveled her before she could even blink. Fast forward to some creepy abandoned warehouse where Min-chae groans awake completely disoriented. A splitting migraine is absolutely pounding in her skull. Then the memory hit that scarred freak jumping her out of nowhere. That creep totally drugged her, knocked her out cold, and dragged her into this dump. She let out a heavy sigh. She literally only had herself to blame. Yeom Seung-gi totally called it, and right now, he and the detective were definitely hunting for her. She took a deep breath, fighting the panic, trying to figure out her next move. Her keys, her phone, her wallet, all snatched. Ghosting her squad was bad enough, but losing that key major problem. Thick concrete walls, solid iron door. Yeah, breaking out of here was going to be rough. But hey, at least she still had Sadius backing her up. Sure, she dragged them into this mess, but they were in it together now. They'd find a way out. Sadius was literally in tears. But Min-chae kept her chin up. Look, maybe she didn't trust the guys 100%, but she knew for a fact they'd come through. They were a team, and honestly, her tracking skills were way too crucial for their endgame strategy. Sadius slowly bought into her pep talk, calming down just a bit. She grabbed a chunk of concrete, gripping it tight. Backup was coming. She just had to survive until they kicked the door down. And honestly, Park Sang-sik was spot on. The exact second Yeom Seung-gi lost her signal, he hit up the detective. He broke the news that the girl was MIA. Worst case, she got dragged into some other player's hell dimension. Best case, just a regular, twisted kidnapping. Park Sang-sik let out a massive sigh. Man, teenagers were an absolute headache to deal with. Getting exposed over a missing kid was insanely risky, but her powers were a must-have for the squad. So, the two geared up to track her down. Baphomet was totally hyped, finally getting a piece of the action. This time victory was practically in the bag. The only real question left was, could Heo Min-chae survive long enough for a rescue? Spinning a knife. John In-hand smirked, mocking how she fought pretty hard. For a little girl, things would have been way less messy if she just rolled over and gave up. Guess his knockout juice didn't pack enough punch. She spat venom at him, calling him a sick psycho, an absolute freak. But to a creep like him, that was basically a huge compliment. Meanwhile, Sadius and Black Knight were throwing down hard. But this deathmatch was strictly humans only, and the guy controlling Black Knight already clutched the win. He casually tossed Sadius aside like trash. Under Lucifer's strict rules, demons absolutely couldn't use any magic outside their base stats. The girl's demon tried to trash talk and stall for time, but it was zero help. John In-han was already making his move. He literally hung her from a hook by her shirt, brutally tying her wrists and ankles. Yet Min-chae refused to break. The psycho leaned in, trying to catch what she was whispering. She totally baited him. The second he got close, she screamed bloody murder into his ear, and viciously bit down to stun him. John In-han jerked back in agony, but she clamped her jaw even tighter. Then, things got completely unhinged. He grabbed a jagged blade, and literally sliced his own ear off. If Min-chae wanted a piece of him that badly, she could keep it. And, as for her squad, he totally knew they were coming. He'd spotted her using the phone when she was stalking him. Thick red. Liquid dripped onto the floor. This exact setup was why she wasn't dead yet, or turned into one of his twisted little dolls, because right now Heo Min-chae was nothing more than his shiny, perfect bait. Those words hit her like a truck, draining her hope and replacing it with pure, suffocating panic. She was terrified of dragging her squad into a literal death trap. Smiling, he whispered that the table was set. They were just waiting for the main course. Meanwhile, Yeom Seung-gi was speeding toward the exact spot Min-chae had dropped earlier. He knew, considering the massive crowd swarming the area and how much time had slipped away. Tracking down his partner was basically mission impossible, but our guy had a major wild card up his sleeve. He tells Baphomet to activate his death-sensing radar. The demon agrees to show him the ropes and blasts a thick cloud of eerie smoke right at his face. Slowly, Yeom Seung-gi's eyes adjust, unlocking a terrifying new filter on reality. The only path radiating absolute danger was the exact route leading straight to Heo Min-chae. If his gut feeling was spot on, the thicker that black fog got, the closer he was getting to ground zero. He was actually hacking this demonic perk to track her down. Baphomet watches him low-key impressed. Humans never fail to keep demons on their toes. In just a matter of minutes, this kid flipped his terrifying innate curse into a totally new cheat code, turning it into a human GPS. Absolutely mind-blowing. Yeom Seung-gi pushes forward, and just as the sun dips below the horizon, he spots the creepy hostage drop zone. Without missing a beat, he whips out his phone, pinging the exact coordinates. Straight to the detective. Now came the genuinely hard part, figuring out how to breach the place. Cut to inside, a rusty metal cart screeches toward Heo Min-chae. Her eyes flutter open, locking onto a twisted setup of heavy hammers and sharp chisels. If this psycho was actually cosplaying a slasher movie villain, she only had one survival tactic. She had to deny him the sick thrill of hearing her scream for now. Playing dead was her only solid move. Right on cue, he pokes at her, trying to trigger a reaction. But she stays completely limp. Jean in Han was weirdly picky. He refused to mess with his victims while they were passed out. But his patience was running dangerously thin. His crew was taking way too long to show up, so he decides to kick off the twisted party early. He violently yanks her by the hair, whispering maliciously that he knows she's totally faking it. He wasn't planning to finish her off just yet. He just wanted to break her a little bit first. She squeezes her eyes shut, bracing for absolute agony, until a sudden loud noise pierces the silence outside, blaring sirens closing in fast. Black Knight immediately demands to know if this idiot left a breadcrumb trail, but the human brushes it off. He tells the demon to completely chill out. He picked him, exactly because he was a flawless professional. There was absolutely zero room for doubt here. He figures some random player must have stumbled onto them and snitched to the cops. Or maybe one of the players was secretly wearing a badge. Those were the only logical explanations. Either way, he wasn't going to sweat it. All he had to do was unleash Black Knight's overpowered skill. Jian Inhan barks out the activation command, and outside the squad cars comes screeching to a chaotic halt as fast as humanly possible. The strike team gears up, getting ready to breach the perimeter. Whoever dropped the anonymous tip clearly wanted to stay a total ghost for their own safety. Our boy was playing it smart, keeping a super low profile. The cops just had to follow the pinned location. Now it was time to let the heavy hitters handle the messy part. The target location was a rundown factory, but someone had straight up built a twisted haunted house maze right inside it. The squad had to meticulously sweep every single blind corner. The intel was crystal clear. A female hostage was trapped in this nightmare, and it was a brutal race against the clock to pull her out alive. Everything was going exactly according to plan. So why the hell was Baphomet's death aura suddenly spiking off the charts? One officer pushes deeper into the pitch-black facility. Creeping through those windowless, suffocating hallways was pure nightmare fuel, and then he spots a looming silhouette in the dark. But that vanished in a flash. Razor-sharp claws lunged from the shadows, aiming right behind the officer. A split second later, the poor guy got shredded like a victim in a straight-up horror flick. The Black Knight had finally made his first move, and now rocking that dark armor was none other than Jian Inhan. Totally hyped that he pulled off the kill himself, his demon barks at him to stay frosty, because his badass new power was literally eating away at his life force. If he chilled inside that suit for too long, it was game over for him permanently. But the guy was absolutely buzzing with adrenaline, itching to hunt down the rest of the crew immediately. Meanwhile, the detective was prowling the area. There was something super creepy and off about this whole setup, twisting and turning like a total death maze. As much as he desperately wanted to rescue the girl, this screamed trap. He frantically radios the squad, screaming at everyone to fall back. The layout was way more messed up than he expected, and they definitely needed backup. But his radio only spat back dead static. Park Sang-sik's heart pounds as the eerie silence sets in. Something twisted was creeping up on him. He could literally feel the cold breath of death closing in on his neck. But like a true veteran, he braces for impact. Boom! The massive armored beast blindsides him out of nowhere, but he barely manages to dodge the deadly strike. This just makes his attacker even more psychotic. The cop unloads his gun, but the bullets don't even dent the armor. What the hell was he fighting? A monster, a human. He was totally mind-blown. The Juggernaut lunges again, and he narrowly rolls out of the way. Out of options. He screams at his own demon partner to explain what the heck this monstrosity is, and the demon casually drops that it's the legendary Black Knight. The detective fiercely questions how that's possible, all while because as far as he knew, the rules strictly banned participating demons from laying a finger on human players. But Gargamanga smirks, claiming that this was just his special ability, urging him to look a little closer at the enemy. Peeking out from inside the monstrous helmet was a human face. Damn it. These scumbags were exploiting a loophole in the system to slaughter everyone. He tossed his useless gun into the dirt. Human or not, if he wanted to make it out alive, he had to throw down hand to hand. While the armored freak was having the time of his life, Yom Seung-gi was outside, sweating bullets, stressed over the delay and the chaotic crashing sounds echoing from inside. Out of nowhere, the battered detective comes bursting through the factory's side door, running for his life. The insane combo of human and demon power was just way too overwhelming to solo. The young guy outside watched the whole brutal scene in pure shock. The armored psychopath stalks toward the bleeding detective, but his killer instincts flare up. and he snarls, demanding to know if some rat is hiding in the shadows. He warns that if they don't step up right now, he'll rip open a portal and swallow the cop whole. Hearing this flex, Yeom Seung-gi gets a wild idea. Maybe they actually had a shot at flipping the script. Meanwhile, Park Sang-sik cracks a bittersweet smile, flashing back to his dad rocking his sharp Korean police uniform. They grew up in a tiny, but super cozy house. A breaking news report about catching some vicious thug flashed on their TV, and little Sang-sik was completely glued to the screen. Suddenly, smack. His mom lightly bonked him on the head with a spoon, jokingly asking if he ever got bored of watching all that serious cop stuff. But the bright-eyed kid just beamed, saying that seeing his dad would always roll back home in the late afternoon, hands full of sweet snacks. For him and his little bro. He always made sure to sit them down and share the absolute craziest stories from his patrol. But then one horrible day, his dad didn't walk through that door. Instead, his grim-faced squad mates showed up to break the devastating news. While digging deep into a ruthless underground syndicate, he got ambushed. The man who felt like a literal superhero, a guy who had even shrugged off getting stabbed in the gut before, was brutally stomped to death by a massive mob. There were so many scumbags involved in the beating that they couldn't even pin down And the worst part, the media totally buried the story of the fallen hero just so the public wouldn't lose faith in the police force. Staring blankly at the TV screen, the young boy finally understood how horribly rigged and unfair society. Boiling with rage, he smashed the remote against the floor and utterly broke down, sobbing. He swore right then and there to become a detective, dedicating his life to bringing justice for his father. But reality check. Sometimes the villains actually win. All thanks to dirty legal loopholes and shady backroom deals fueled by greedy, selfish scumbags, sometimes even those. The people supposed to enforce the law. They're way dirtier than the actual criminals. Park Sang-sik didn't just slap on a detective badge for his dad. He took and absolutely crushed this corrupt system. Somebody had to take out the trash, right? He wanted to actually protect the underdogs. That's why he poured his entire soul into the badge. But then out of nowhere, things got weird. This was his shot. The ultimate chance to serve up some brutal street-level karma. Snap back to reality. The detective gets absolutely folded, blasting backward through the air. John and Han is completely vibing with this insane raw power. Meanwhile, Sang-sik is barely clinging to consciousness. But he refuses to drop. He forces himself up. No way is he tapping out like this. There's way too much scum left to clean up. Hand trembling, he pulls out his key and tries to unlock his hell. But boom, taunting him with a smirk. Can't twist it. Guess you can't open it, huh? Even so, Sang-sik grinds his teeth, pushing with every ounce of muscle he has. But it's totally useless. He gets swatted down like a fly. The second the key hits the concrete, Han boots it across the room. Gargamon just watches, claiming his hands are tied. Though even he has to admit this beatdown is ridiculously one-sided. The monster scoffs, asking what exactly the cop expected, because in his twisted mind, it doesn't matter how galaxy-brain the detective's tactics are, the world hasn't evolved past the food chain. Nothing hits better than being the apex predator, the alpha who gets to flex pure dominance and absolutely devour the weak. Bottom line, a smart rabbit is still just snacks for a leopard. He winds up for the kill shot, but wait, someone else steps into his peripheral vision. Han glares over at Yeom Seung-gi. Seriously, another pathetic rabbit begging to be slaughtered. The detective locks eyes with him, silently screaming "thank God" on the inside. The psycho is just confused. Why are all these weaklings suddenly crawling out of the woodwork? Meanwhile, our boy Seung-gi is trying to keep his cool, but his knees are literally knocking together. Sang-sik is just praying the kid actually has a master plan, cause otherwise they are insanely cooked. The brute tosses the cop aside, locking onto his shiny new target. Seung-gi braces himself. He's up against a meathead, which means he's got to bait his massive ego. And like clockwork, Han takes the bait hook, line, and sinker. Seung-gi holds his ground, putting up a tough guy front and dares him to swing. The monster charges, closing the gap instantly. Right as he's in strike zone, our MC triggers Baphomet, demanding to see the scent of death on its absolute lowest setting. Boom. Checkmate. He already knows he won this, waiting for the absolute last millisecond. The monster throws a massive haymaker and he effortlessly slips past it. In Han's brain, short circuits, realizing this scrawny kid just ghosted a punch that completely wrecked the veteran cop. Seung-gi just smirks. He's got this in the bag. The second he learned how Baphomet's power actually works, he realized that with a little bit of big brain logic, he could hack it into the ultimate cheat code. See, he can use it to literally read his opponent's moves and highlight the exact path to dodge a fatal blow. And since he was just dealing with basic physical attacks, dodging became stupidly easy. Basically, by knowing exactly when there's a 100% chance, of getting sent 6 feet under. He could matrix dodge every single punch flawlessly. Little by little, John Inhan is losing his freaking mind trying to catch his prey. Meanwhile, echoing in his head, Black Knight hits him with a grim warning every single move is draining his HP. He desperately needs to land a knockout blow and fast. On the flip side, Yeom Sung-gi is silently thanking his lucky stars for all that brutal morning cardio. His stamina is totally off the charts, easily letting him keep up this insane pace. He just keeps dodging flawlessly, forcing the big guy to burn through his energy, totally vibing with the taste of victory. He heavily plays mind games with his opponent. His reflexes and physical stats have, honestly, skyrocketed. He backflips out of the danger zone, but Baphomet hits him with a reality check about the ticking clock. He needs to find a way to make this hulking beast commit ultimate treason. But Yeom Sung-gi instantly shuts that shady idea down. He actually has a squad to rely on. And, while he is keeping the absolute aggro on himself, Park Sang-sik is creeping up on the key like a total ninja. If he can snatch that key before time runs out, it is game over. It is honestly a galaxy brain strat. But what happens if John In-han suddenly spots the detective lurking in the shadows again? Baphomet wonders out loud. And like he straight up heard the demon, the brute starts questioning why this annoying little rabbit keeps baiting him and running away. Then, it clicks. He whips his head around and catches Park Sang-sik hovering his hand right over the key, just a few agonizing inches away from grabbing it. The dude absolutely loses his mind with rage. How dare these two clowns mess with him like this? With zero hesitation, he lunges straight at the detective who is burning. Every last drop of willpower to reach that key. Park Sang-sik finally snatches it and locks onto his target. It is officially time to send someone packing to hell. He twists the key and the gate creeps open. Pitch black chains explode outward, wrapping tightly around Jeon In-han, and immediately start dragging his heavy body into the abyss. But right before he plunges into the hell of injustice, he desperately claws at the ground, leaving everyone totally speechless. Deep down, he knew his twisted actions earned him a VIP ticket to the underworld, but there was still so much toxic stuff he wanted to witness in the mortal realm. Flashback to the red light district, crowded with shady people roaming the streets. A boy was born and raised in this exact gutter. It definitely was not a walk in the park, especially for a kid. He locks eyes on a gorgeous woman taking a drag of her cigarette. Some guy casually struts up to her. His name was In-gyeok. Out of absolutely nowhere, he violently slaps the girl across the face, aggressively warning her to never drop his first name like that again. Thanks to this deeply messed up and brutal childhood, he got seriously addicted to recreating the trauma he suffered, starting off by torturing street rats, and slowly leveling up to human beings. But suddenly, from behind, Yeom Sung-gi comes crashing in with a brutal flying dropkick. He ruthlessly declares he could not care less about this serial killer's tragic backstory. After tanking that massive kick, John In-han's grip shatters and he gets completely swallowed whole by the hell of injustice. Against all odds, the chaotic raid was finally over, and the squad walked away as the absolute winners. Meanwhile, the detective is starting to feel every ounce of pain hit him like a truck as his adrenaline completely crashes. Yeom Sung-gi steps up, reaching out his hand. He makes it clear he is here to bust Ho Min-chae out. He actually cracks a joke with Sung-gi, which is crazy because acting all buddy-buddy is so not his vibe. The old guy is totally wiped out. He even teases that his nephew needs to give him a piggyback ride right now. So taking the crown for this round are Yeom Sung-gi and Park Sang-sik, totally locking in their alliance and making their bond rock solid. Cut back to the creepy factory. The heavy doors finally screech open, and they actually came through for her. Yeah, they took a massive beating, but they pulled off the mission like absolute bosses. Sung-gi snatches up a jagged piece of glass and immediately starts slashing through her bindings. The second the ropes drop, her legs totally give out, sending her crashing straight to her knees. She always acts super tough, giving off major baddie energy. But right now she is just sobbing her eyes out like a little kid. Having death staring you literally in the face, absolute nightmare fuel. So he steps back, giving Min-chae some breathing room to just let all those intense feelings out. Meanwhile, and he completely dragged that thug straight down to hell. They are officially in the clear. Soon enough, the paramedics roll up and they stage the whole scene to make it look like the detective single-handedly rescued a kidnapped teenage girl. While that goes down, our main guy just melts back into the shadows, ghosting the scene without dropping a single clue. As for the killer, you would think the case was totally wrapped up right. Wrong. The breaking news broadcast about the whole messy situation catches the eye of a very shady businessman, and slowly but surely this guy starts he realizes this detective popped up during the insane Gagaka turf war, and boom, here he is again. It clicks for him. What if this cop is actually another hell creator manipulating the real world? The main suspect supposedly dipped and is dodging the cops. But what if he is actually trapped inside the detective's personal hell dimension? Yoonung Han is not wasting time. He immediately rings up the big boss. He asks his CEO to secretly investigate Park Sang-sik, completely playing it off like he just wants to show some massive respect and gratitude for the heroic rescue. He is about to find out real quick if his wild theory about this cop is actually legit. Jump to the hospital next morning. Sung-gi is flipping through some shady-looking files while Min-chae is knocked out cold in bed. Slowly, she starts fluttering her eyes open, only to spot the young guy sitting right there. He immediately starts roasting her, joking that the little brat is finally awake from her beauty sleep. Without even a second thought, she literally launches herself in, sending all his papers crashing to the floor. Sung-gi is completely caught off guard, totally freezing up from the sudden hug. But the second he feels her tears soaking his shirt, honestly, for a tough guy, he handles it pretty sweet. Feeling super awkward, he gently pushing Min-chae back onto the hospital bed. Right now, she desperately needs to chill out and catch some actual rest. He promises to shoot the detective a text that she is conscious again. But just before he heads out the door, he slides a stack of documents over to her. It is literally all the background intel they have on their next two enemies. He actually meant to hand this off way earlier. But with the whole kidnapping fiasco, this is his first real chance. As he leaves, Sung-gi tells her to study that file like her life depends on it, and reminds her to stay safe. Later, when he strolls into the detective's hospital room, the older guy starts whining, totally faking being salty that Sung-gi went to check on Min-chae before him. A fully grown man acting this jealous, absolutely wild. While the cop keeps rambling on, he suddenly digs into his pocket and tosses a random key straight to Sung. Because after this absolute train wreck of a day, one thing is glaringly obvious. Hunting down the rest of the hell creators is going to be a massive blood-sweating nightmare. Psychos like this serial killer literally do not have an off switch, and as this twisted game dragged on, the stakes were absolutely skyrocketing. He tossed him a spare key to Park Sang-sik's place. Even if their enemies were totally unhinged, crashing a literal detective's crib was basically a death wish. So yeah, it was the ultimate safe zone. Yeom Sung-gi totally bought into that logic. Honestly, having a grown-up to back him up was a major flex. He promised to crash there the second he finished, tying up some loose ends at home. But Park Sang-sik had one last trick up his sleeve. He snagged a notebook and shoved it into Yeom Sung-gi's hands. This specific journal held the raw intel, the cold, hard, accurate digits, completely exposing the fake stats he fed them back when they formed their little alliance. Time completely froze for Yeom Sung-gi. His entire reality shattered. Because this dude's little stunt, straight up betrayal. If this sparked his key, it was the absolute perfect excuse to wipe him off the map. Because let's be real, by the time this deathmatch wrapped up, this detective was going to morph into an absolute nightmare of a boss fight. His combat stats were literally off the charts, and judging from their previous brutal clash, he was absolutely destined to be the final boss. What was Yeom Sung-gi supposed to do here? His brain was racing. Now that he had hard proof of the betrayal, should he pocket this card for later, or just execute him on the spot? Catching the kid's totally spaced out vibe, the cop asked if Yeom Sung-gi was feeling sick. Yeom Sung-gi smoothly dodged the interrogation, muttering some excuse about needing to hit the bathroom. Boom, right on cue. His keys started glowing fiercely. Baphomet materialized out of thin air, immediately zeroing in on the tampered intel in that notebook, hyping up how massively that lie could have backfired on them. The verdict: the sin of betrayal was officially locked in. This was a golden ticket to permanently delete the detective from the game, because not only was the guy insanely overpowered, he was holding way too much dirt on their crew. The next time this cop stabbed them in the back, it would probably drag Yeom Sung-gi straight into his own personal hell. The teen white-knuckled his key. As the demon dangled the ultimate power in front of him, the chance to forge his very own, he locked in betrayal, because that was the one sin that made his blood absolutely boil. But wait, if he crossed Park Sang-sik right here, right now, he would be exactly as toxic as the scumbags he was busy punishing. And taking a step back, what if after living a full life, and finally dying, this exact backstab turned into pure karma, dragging him down into his own torturous loop? If that happened, he'd be forced to stare at the ugly mugs of every single person he despised. Hard pass. Baphomet just soaked in his rant, admitting that when they first linked up, he totally expected the kid to weaponize his massive inferiority complex, his darkest intrusive thoughts and raw rage to craft the absolute perfect hell. But the closer the demon got to these two humans, the more he realized Yeom Sung-gi was leveling up into an entirely different breed. Human bonds and messy feelings. Yeah, I don't care, the demon scoffed. But if at any point, your choices put both of our necks on the line, I swear I will make you deeply regret being born. The teen accepted the ruthless terms without flinching, but he was dead set on making sure the demon never got that chance. Cutting back to the detective's hideout, the trio huddled up to hash things out a bit longer. Out of nowhere, a shadow falls over them, and stepping right into the light is none other than Yu Myung-han. He finally got the tea he needed and decided it was time to officially crash the party. After a heavy heart-to-heart, Hyo Min-chae heads back to her room to catch some much-needed sleep. Out in the hallway, totally clueless about who they were brushing past, the two Hell creators literally cross paths. Yoon Young-han smoothly slides into the room, flashing a fake friendly smile, acting all thrilled to see them again. But that immediate red flag put Park Sang-sik in full survival mode, dropping the nice guy act. He straight up asks if they were teaming up, or plotting to drag him straight to hell. The kid instantly tenses up, but the veteran detective steps up to the plate. Playing completely dumb, Park Sang-sik swears he has zero clue what the guy is yapping about, demanding to know how he even bypassed security into a VIP room. Without missing a beat, the slick CEO smirks, joking that the detective's acting deserves an Oscar. Right then, reality hits. They are backed into a corner. Yoon Young-han keeps running his mouth, claiming that on paper he just came to hype up a heroic cop who snatched a girl back from a serial killer. But keeping it 100, what he actually wants is to lock in a hard alliance with both of them. The offer totally blindsides Yeom Sung-gi, but his brain is stuck on one massive detail. How on earth did this creep track them down? Did he fumble the bag that night, or leave digital footprints when they rescued Hyo Min-chae? The shady businessman easily reads the kid's panicked confusion. He flexes that solving the puzzle was actually a breeze, because a ridiculously flashy detective rolling up with a literal teenager as his sidekick is basically begging for the spotlight. To top it off, Yoon Young-han had his secretary do some heavy snooping, unearthing that Yeom Sung-gi is literally just a college student, slamming a fruit basket onto the table. He smirks, saying it made him wonder why a top-tier detective would hijack cases totally out of his jurisdiction, especially while dragging a random kid along for the ride. The math was simple. They had to be fellow Hell creators, running a low-key temporary alliance. Looking back at the Gagaka showdown and the serial killer bloodbath, the duo only threw hands together because their enemies were actual players too. Honestly, he didn't even need to waste breath explaining his logic. So what's the next move? Do they just confess, or does the detective have a wild card up his sleeve to dodge this trap? Park Sang-sik flashes a cop, asking what kind of fairy tale ending he expected to hear. After all that yapping, that unbothered energy straight up stuns both of them. But before anyone can even blink, the detective presses Yoon Young-han on his actual endgame. Are they supposed to just drop to their knees and beg to be his obedient lapdogs like Young Cheol did? Yeah, hard pass on that. It looks like the CEO finally met his match, running into a player who is just as stacked with intel on his shady background and every single move. Yoon Young-han waves it off, claiming he doesn't need them groveling. If he just wanted minions, he wouldn't be wasting his own time. He would have sent some random grunt, like he spit out earlier. His real target here is building an unbreakable alliance with both of them. But Park Sang-sik shuts that down in a heartbeat, clapping back that his squad with the architect is already rock solid and he'd probably scooped up the streamer too. It was time to expose what the spoiled brat actually wanted. A sly smirk creeps across his face as he drops a massive bombshell that literally nobody saw coming. Turns out the young Jong Chol had vanished into thin air, and the corporate suits had zero clue if he was rotting in hell or just locked up in some dark basement. So he was hunting the mastermind. He wanted to track down the ghost, who managed to pull the strings completely under the radar. Without a doubt, whoever pulled this off had to be the most lethal player in the game, he says, extending his hand. Yoon Young-han wasn't about to throw out some useless trash offer. He just wanted to team up until they nailed the absolute menace behind the architect's disappearance. And right then and there, Yeom Sung-gi made his play. This suit was a serious threat. Dragging him down into the hell of betrayal definitely wasn't going to be a walk in the park. His own hell had a limit, but he knew exactly how to cheat the system. Reaching out, they locked hands in a tense grip. Yeom Sung-gi would ride out this alliance only to force this dude to backstab him later. Cut to a sketchy abandoned building where the architect is completely tied up to a chair. Footsteps echo as someone steps out of the shadows. It was a girl who looked totally innocent until now. Enter Choi Moo-jin. The second she walks in, the two massive thugs guarding him instantly bow down. The girl coldly orders them to rip the duct tape off his mouth and make him talk. Jong Cheol immediately starts cussing them out, screaming to know who they are. and why they are doing this, completely ignoring his tantrum. Choi Moo-jin asks him what his crime is and coldly starts a countdown. When the clock hits 0 and he's still quiet, she unleashes her demon on him. The architect panics, begging to just talk, but it's way too late for that. Snap. His finger gets bent entirely backward, and the guy absolutely shrieks in pure agony. Meanwhile, she deadpan asks him again, what is his crime? Sweating and desperate, Jung Jong-chil cries out that he'll spill everything. He promises to answer literally anything. In response, she just orders them to snap another finger. While the architect writhes in absolute torment, she calmly tells him she wants a straight, clear answer. Then, she repeats the question, asking what his crime is, and the sobbing man chokes out that it was a crime of negligence. Choi Moo-jin presses him on whether he knows another player. Fighting through the insane pain, he gasps out capable. But since that wasn't a full sentence, she commands them to snap a third one. Desperate to stop the torture, he screams out that it's the name of one of the players, but she punishes him anyway. Suddenly, the mechanical whir of a printer echoes through the dead silence that now fills the creepy room. If he wanted to say it was a specific person, he should have spit that name out clearly right from the jump. The dude just keeps whining that he already agreed to cooperate. But that was pointless. She simply did. She skimmed through the massive pile of dirt she had dug up on Yoon Young-han, better known in the streets as Capable. Sure, the guy was sharp and had crazy connections, but none of that mattered. She was dead set on dragging him straight down to hell. Flipping the switch, she signaled her 2 right-hand men to step up, and gave the word it was time to gear up and lock in. Cut back to the hospital. Yoon Young-han was stressing, admitting he had 0 clues about the shadow who snatched Jung Jung-chul. This totally blind spot was making the whole manhunt a massive headache, but he would bet his life on one single fact. If Jung Jung-chul ended up spilling his secrets to the ops, the enemy crew would absolutely pull up to ambush him. Switching back, she checked if her squad was locked and loaded, and the boys nodded 100% ready. This upcoming ambush, it was the exact moment the businessman planned to snatch up the rival player. That was the whole point of teaming up. Flashback to 12 years ago. Deep in a shady parking garage, a mob boss was ordering a brutal wipeout. One guy desperately tried to defend his crew's rep, shouting that they couldn't just roll up uninvited and walk away clean. But they cut him off instantly. A massive punch leveled him, and the heavy beatdown kept coming, crashing down until he was out cold. Look, they fully knew the stakes of stepping, and they pulled up for one reason only: to settle the score. If you clowns just kept your mouths shut and took the hit, maybe you would have walked out with just a few bruises, sneered Kim Jong-soo, the head honcho of the rival syndicate. Suddenly, 3 sleek imported rides screeched, and heavily armed goons poured out of every single door. Choi Moon-jang, the big boss of the Chaesobang crew, had officially arrived. Kim Jong-soo smirked, greeting him like they were just catching up over coffee. One of Choi's underlings was boiling mad at the pure disrespect, but the boss kept his cool, asking straight up what Kim wanted. Kim just grinned. There was 0 point. Playing dumb about why they crashed the party. They had unfinished business. Out of the shadows, a wheelchair rolled forward. Slumped inside was Cho Sang-rak, barely conscious and totally wrecked. This guy used to run the Jongno gang as a top shot caller. And now just look at the absolute state of him. He caught a beating so ridiculously savage it was a miracle he survived. The doctors didn't even know if he'd ever walk again. Getting to the point, Kim Jong-soo demanded to know how the Chaesobang boss was going to pay for this mess. One of Choi's guys snapped back, claiming this was all on Cho Sang-rak himself. If the idiot hadn't poked his nose into their turf, he wouldn't be in a chair right now. But before he could pop off any further, his own boss smacked the life out of him, shutting him up fast. Choi understood the brutal reality of the underworld better than anyone. There was 0 room for yapping out of turn. So, since Choi Moon-jang read the room perfectly, it meant the old-timer was ready to pay the ultimate price. 2 massive briefcases hit the concrete right at his feet. The cocky rival laid out the terms: pack both bags full of cold hard cash, and fork over a fat cut of his territory's profits. Basically, Kim wanted to swallow the Chaesobang crew's resources whole to level up his own syndicate. Total hostile takeover. Real shame about your bosses kid ending up wrecked like this. So, what are you waiting for, old man? It was time to stuff those bags. Or consider this an all-out bloodbath. Deadpan Choi Moon-jang ordered his guy to bring over his daughter, and the lackey pulled the tiny girl out of the back seat. She was literally just 7 years old at the time. Kim Jong-soo scoffed, asking if this boomer seriously thought playing the sympathy card worked on hardened mobsters. Choi gently patted his kid's head, whispering that he owed the scary man in front of them a massive debt, and sadly, she had to be the one to pay it off. Without flinching, the old man whipped out a nasty sharp blade from his coat. The ops claimed their boss's kid would never walk again, so an eye for an eye, right? If he did the exact same thing to his own flesh and blood, they would be square. Before a single soul could process the madness, he slashed straight through both of her Achilles tendons. The whole garage froze in pure, sickened horror. Literally no one braced themselves for this kind of wild. We're talking about hardcore mobsters who've been running the streets for over 20 years. And even they were totally sick to their stomachs watching a father literally destroy his own daughter's health. This twisted move completely crossed every single line imaginable. While she's writhing in pure agony, her so-called dad casually strokes her head, whispering that he owes her big time and swears he'll pay it back. A random object clatters to the floor and a guy quickly snatches it up. Dozens of thugs are sprawled out, totally wrecked around him. Creepily enough, pitch-black smoke is pouring out of their mouths, noses, and ears. Meanwhile, Che Mujin is just chilling in her wheelchair, smack in the middle of this total chaos, if he should wrap up the dirty work for her. But our girl shuts that down instantly. She wants to collect this massive debt herself. All he had to do was wheel her right into the main hall. Her dad is violently shaking, and the second those massive doors swing open, he absolutely knows he's completely cooked. His daughter had finally leveled up enough to come rip back everything he owed her. In a total panic, he begs and pleads for her to stay away. But it's game over. Che Mujin turns the key, ripping open a literal hellscape that swallows her father's body and soul whole. And just like that, she makes her epic exit, having finally settled the score. If that sketchy businessman ruled the daylight, Che Mujin was the absolute queen of the shadows. Unlike Yoon Young-han and his corporate lapdogs who could pull off shady stunts and dodge jail time using their massive wealth, her underground crew only committed crimes in her name just to avoid being dragged straight to hell. One of her loyal goons hands over a leaked copy of the CEO's schedule. She gives a quick nod for the stellar hustle. Now what was she going to do with this terrified architect? The guy is literally begging for mercy. He had coughed up every single thing they asked for, and whether they liked it or not, he was just another pawn getting played by Yoon Young-han too. She rolls up to him, staring fiercely right into his soul, and tells him he's off the hook. But he owes her big time because she's letting him walk away when she easily could have unalived him on the spot. Jong Cheol eagerly takes the deal. Taking on a massive debt totally beats ending up in a body bag, so the mobster signals to cut the dude loose, saying he's still got some decent value left. She takes one more hard look at the executive schedule and spots that his fancy charity gala kicks off in exactly 2 days. The absolute perfect setup for a brutal ambush. Che Mujin barks an order for her crew to rally every single heavy hitter they can find. Fast forward to D-Day, and the entire squad is locked and loaded. She asks if the boys are ready to roll, and they roar back a hard yes. It was officially time to launch the mission. They all swarm out and pile into their blacked-out rides. Meanwhile, out at some ridiculously lavish mansion, the party is already popping off, and Yoon Young-han is schmoozing with all the top-tier VIPs. Suddenly, he locks eyes with his absolute most anticipated guests. Yun Sung-gi and Park Sang-sik were specifically dragged to this party to serve as his ultimate saviors, but they aren't exactly playing along. The detective straight up says he's only here for the free buffet, claiming the kid was the one who signed the alliance, not him. Yun Sung-gi tells him to quit being so dramatic, then checks with the boss to see if he's 100% sure the target will even show up tonight. And the guy smirks, saying he's totally positive. Because unlike his heavily guarded corporate fortress, this venue is stupidly easy to breach with practically zero security, making it a total cakewalk for someone to slip right into the crowd. So without a doubt, she was going to dive headfirst right into his trap. Little did they know, another absolute menace from hell was already speeding toward the event. The deadly game was officially back on. Inside the massive estate rented out by the corrupt CEO, the gala is in full swing. But from a distance, Che Mujin is closely tracking the cops' every single move through her binoculars. Even with a super hyped-up event, the security detail looked like an absolute joke. Seriously, even her lowest-tier rookies could have pulled this off cleaner. So what's the play here? The young guy next to her asked. Their main target was Yoon Young-han, and ghosting this golden opportunity. Absolute waste. As for the random NPCs crowding the venue, they just flatten anyone stupid enough to block their path. Honestly, running things this way was a total breeze. The guy stepped out of his ride, strolling toward the main gates exactly as planned. A beefy guard blocked him, barking that it was strictly invite only. The dude just casually dug into his coat, acting like he was fishing out a fancy envelope. The guard locked eyes on him, super suspicious. But nope, no envelope here. He whipped out something way deadlier, and before the bouncer could even blink, the young guy totally wrecked him. Boom. One obstacle down. The strike was so insane and lightning fast. The second guard totally froze, completely failing to call for backup. Well, VIP access granted. Over the comms, Choi Moo-jin barked the green light for Team 1 and Team 2 to crash the party. Both squads floored their gas pedals, violently smashing right through the entrance. Zero stealth mode meant all eyes instantly snapped to them. An entire army of heavily armed goons swarmed the venue, brutally hijacking the DJ's audio system through their radios. The lead thug ordered all the random guests to chill out. He screamed at them to hug the side walls, making it crystal clear that the wealthy businessman was their only prey. If they didn't immediately pace themselves against the walls, they'd be gunned down as hostiles. Yoon Eung-han coldly watched the absolute chaos unfolding. So the hit squad actually showed up. This just meant he needed to ghost the scene. Right before the crowd completely lost their minds, suddenly a blood-curdling scream echoed, and a random dude dropped dead right in front of the mob. Big yikes. That poor guy just got turned into a brutal warning label so everyone would realize this wasn't a drill. Thanks to that stunt, the entire guest list spiraled into hardcore panic mode, while our businessman stood there totally unfazed. The trigger-happy thug instantly locked eyes with him. Yeom Seung-gi was obviously itching to see how this messy drama was going to play out. But the detective slammed the brakes on him doing anything suicidal, just because they were technically allied with the VIP. Didn't mean they had to tank bullets for him. The odds were trash, at least 24 heavily armed goons. There was zero chance they could send that entire mob to hell in one go. Plus, if Yoon Eung-han actually got snatched up, that wouldn't even be a massive L. After all, the guy was an absolute unit anyway. In the detective's eyes, ditching the fight was actually the smartest play. They were basically useless right now. Meanwhile, the rich guys desperately tried to play it cool, acting as chill as humanly possible, pretending they had the situation on lock. One of the grunts hit up the boss lady on comms, confirming the target was cornered. "Where do we drag him?" Her response: "He didn't need to drag him a single inch." Her command was brutally simple: wipe him out. Her inner demon whispered, asking why she wasn't dragging him down to her own personal hell. But she fired back. The rules were set in stone. Lucifer called this a deadly survival game, and sending people straight to hell wasn't the only cheat code to win. Showing her face in person just to drag him under. Way too risky. On top of that absolute pig of an architect spilled the tea earlier, screaming that alongside himself, our businessman had also hired a shady guy named Gagaka. The flashback of the architect squealing that info was still fresh. The thought flashed through her mind. The second she stepped foot into that mansion, she'd be an absolute sitting duck. She was just playing it smart. Even though he got the memo, her resident demon wasn't exactly vibing with the game plan. After all, his only goal was watching these mortals get banished to the Shadow Realm. She just cracked up, telling Cherub he had literally zero reasons to stress. The minute this little game wrapped up, she was going to send every single mobster on the premises straight to the underworld. The CEO guy, he looked like he had the whole board rigged. He snapped his fingers, announcing it was time to kick off the main event. One of the thugs scoffed, wondering if the dude had completely lost his marbles. But slowly, strapped bodyguards started materializing from the crowd swarming the syndicate. The chaotic brawl popped off, and it looked like Yoon Young-han's crew was already dominating the field. He might have stalked her entire schedule, but there was zero chance he could have scoped out the full guest list before this crazy party even dropped. The suit actually came prepared, hiring undercover muscle to blend right in with the VIPs. His orders: stay perfectly in character, keep things low-key, and hawk every single detail happening around them. Turns out, Cha Moo-jin wasn't the only one flexing some serious firepower. He totally gave her props for having the guts to ambush him, though. But now that she was stuck in the shadows, what was her next move? The mob boss just smirked. Over the comms, his squad frantically called in the surprise backup, complaining they couldn't even get within breathing distance of the CEO. So she immediately commands squads 3 and 4 to breach the perimeter. More sketchy black cars pull up, crashing straight into the estate. Yoon Young-han just watches the chaos unfold, not even slightly fazed by the heavy reinforcements. He casually strolls back toward his grand crib. It was officially go time for her. She hypes up her demon, ordering him to hunt that guy down and drag him back like a trophy. She'd definitely promote him to the top boss of the abyss for this. Cherub steps out of the ride, locking his sights straight on the target. Absolute madness is tearing up the front lawn, and the second Cherub joins the party. His crazy raw power completely flips the script of the turf war. See, this entity didn't have a physical body, but his whole trick was hijacking human hosts. Yet mid-swing on a heavy punch, he accidentally shatters the hand of his own meat suit. Another goon sees the opening and lands a nasty, cheap shot from behind. But Cherub, he just uses this busted vessel as a stepping stone and instantly hijacks the guy who just punched him. With the fresh download complete, he flashes a wicked grin, feeling absolutely overpowered. This new ride was way slicker than the last, but honestly, being a monster, he couldn't care less about who was friendly fire or not. So the whole yard just descended into absolute unhinged bedlam. He barks at the remaining crew to use this distraction to blitz the mansion, hyped up on that adrenaline. The squad aggressively pushes forward. Meanwhile, this intense mind game between the two top dogs keeps raging on, and piece by piece pawns are getting wiped off the board. This wasn't about waiting for the perfect window anymore. This was about going all in no matter how brutal the cost. The aggressive banging at the massive front doors gets louder by the second. The raid team was hammering it non-stop, desperately trying to breach the entrance. Out of nowhere, another enforcer steps up and literally kicks the massive doors wide open, letting the whole swarm flood in. He barks at his crew to split up into micro squads of 2 and 3 to kick off the hunt. Leaving without Yoon Young-han completely crushed was not an option. Boom, the whole unit scatters, sweeping the massive crib for their target. Up in one of the rooms, 2 lackeys are just whining about how these wealthy elites love to flex, all while turning the place upside down. One dude spots a dark closet, assuming it's completely empty, and yanks it open. Big mistake. Chilling right inside that closet was Gagaka gripping his creepy key, and just like that, one by one, he started swallowing these tough guys whole, dragging them straight down into his personal dimension of despair. See, the kid's trap had a massive catch. Technically speaking, it was never supposed to work inside this mansion, the mansion. But since Yoon Jung-han was an absolute mastermind, he didn't just rush in blind. Way before going on the offensive, he cooked up a bulletproof defense by completely rewriting the property deeds to his estates. He slapped Gagaka's name on every single piece of paper. In plain English, the kid was now fully weaponized, able to trigger his sick powers anywhere on the private grounds. Gagaka totally milked this loophole to rig his turf, wiring the entire mansion with hidden passageways and lethal traps. Because of this, he could warp through the estate and blitz any room faster than a ghost, pushing his abilities to the absolute max. Meanwhile, Yoon Jung-han was chilling in the VIP section watching the chaos unfold. Way more grunts than expected were getting dragged straight into Gagaka's personal hell. But even with this massive kill streak, he still hadn't snared the real threat. Seriously, where was the boss hiding? The whole bloodbath was basically deadlocked. Chai Moo-jin, on the flip side, finally clocked that her squad inside the mansion was dropping like flies. It was a total wipeout. All she could hear through the comms were their blood-curdling screams right before getting chewed up and spit out. This insane ability had to belong to the businessman, or maybe his shadow partner. Sadly for her, she had already sent all her heavy hitters inside. Panicking, she barked at her surviving crew to bail out of the house and scramble toward the garden, figuring his hell key wouldn't work out there, making it a safe zone. One by one, the terrified stragglers poured out. Turns out they weren't completely brain dead and actually knew when to fold. Just as the hype was peaking, and the kid was having the time of his life, the enemy's rage quit. Running low on tricks, he camped inside the mansion and ordered Gagaka to hold the line. Dialing the cops right now would be a massive waste of time. The only thing that could actually flip the script and save their skins was his shady alliance with Yeom Sung-gi. Outside, the duo locked into their sniper spots, blending in flawlessly with the rest of the VIP guests. Yeom Sung-gi dug into his pocket and popped in a stealth earpiece. Plot twist, they actually had a wild card in play. Someone that even the mastermind Yoon Jung-han was totally clueless about. Kim Min-chae was their hidden ace. He pinged her on the radio and she instantly fired back, confirming the audio was crystal clear. Yeom Sung-gi asked if she had locked onto the psycho who greenlit the mansion raid. To get a better read with her power, she started sprinting through the dark halls. Thanks to her crazy radar skills, she could easily track Yeom Sung-gi, Park Sung-sik, Yoon Jung-han, Gagaka, and one absolute mystery signal. The target was lurking near the front gates, but since she was a woman, dragging her into the hell of lust was a no-go. Yeom whispered that he was pinned down for now, and asked if the girl was actually ready to follow his insane orders. Look, she had already stared death in the face once, so she knew damn well he wouldn't backstab her. She just locked in and said she was down for whatever. Step 1 was making direct contact with this shadow boss to figure out why she was still camping in the dark. More than likely, her hell's power scaling was weak trash, leaving her pretty useless in a head-on fight. Plus, her pet demon was stuck in the garden, meaning Min-chae had a solid window. Creeping like a shadow, she approached the parked car. Meanwhile, Chai Moo-jin was sweating bullets, desperately trying to calculate her next move. If the siren started wailing, her only option was to ghost the scene immediately. Out of nowhere, A random girl yanked her car door open, making the mobster jump out of her skin. The teen casually asked to hop in, complaining about the freezing weather outside. The gangster aggressively demanded to know who the hell she was, but Kim Min-chae just smirked, saying it would be way easier to show rather than tell, flashing her hell key right in the boss's face. How the hell did this girl track her down? And the bigger question, how did she know Mujin was a hellmaker too? Was this part of her broken ability? The girl just looked at her and said not to. There was absolutely zero reason to panic. She wasn't here to throw hands. And you could totally tell because her aura was completely chill. Turns out someone was dying to have a little chat with her. She just popped out her earpiece and casually slipped it right into Che Mujin's ear. The voice on the other end started talking, and she straight up demanded to know what he wanted. I mean, if this guy was chilling out in the garden, that meant he was blending right in with the shady businessman's VIP guests. And honestly, he was pulling off the ultimate stealth mode. But he wasn't just creeping around for fun. He desperately needed her backup. His master plan: team up and absolutely blindside Yoon Young-han right then and there. She was totally useless, stuck on the outside, which was painfully obvious by how awkwardly her squad was just standing around the lawn. But if she actually listened to his crazy scheme, they could totally ambush the big boss. She hesitated, wondering what the heck her next move should be, especially since this dude's real motives were a massive red flag. Still, just like she admitted earlier, her hands were completely tied out here. Everything was playing out exactly how Hyun Sung-gi orchestrated it. So, swallowing her pride, she slowly agreed to the team-up. She immediately barks out fresh orders to her crew. They snap their attention to the terrified guests, practically threatening them to follow every single word the guy said. Everybody had to line up single file. They were about to march straight into the mansion of the very guy who invited them. Moving at a painfully slow crawl, the crowd began flooding into the massive estate. Once the hostages were secured inside, the real plan kicked in. The new rule: one gangster locked to one VIP. Every mobster grabbed a guest and paired up like glue. Honestly, it looked like the most messed up three-legged race was about to pop off across the entire mansion. The absolute mastermind behind this Hyun Sung-gi. It was literally the only way to survive the pure hell of Gagaka's attacks. He dials up Yoon Young-han, frantically asking for his next move. But here is the kicker. These hostages were his top-tier clients. We are talking high-profile public figures. Guests aside, what the heck would the creators think of him now? And how on earth were they going to explain this massive mess to the cops later? Basically, his hands were completely tied. His reputation and his entire empire were hanging by a thread. He couldn't flex his muscle at all. So he straight up commands Gagaka to hold his fire and stand down. Thanks to this massive handicap, the gang members could hunt him down with way less heat on their backs. The second Hyun Sung-gi, locked in this alliance, he had absolutely zero interest in letting the player target Yoon Young-han. Because the real final boss of this twisted game was the businessman himself, and taking him out was the only thing that actually mattered. Yoon Young-han starts absolutely spiraling into a full-blown panic attack. These brainless thugs who usually just smash things with zero brainpower were suddenly making insanely calculated high IQ plays. Meaning, the puppet master pulling the strings had completely changed. But who the heck was this new big brain operating in the shadows? He already had those three freaks as his partners. Could his rival seriously have even more secret connections? No freaking way. No freaking way. The guy pulling the strings on these new overrides had to be an inside job. And that was literally the only explanation for how they managed to hack together. A setup that completely shut down Gagaka's insane powers. He absolutely hated having to fall back on his own demon's cheap tricks. But push had finally come to shove. He summons Rom and the demonic entity materializes right beside him in a flash. The CEO immediately demands to trigger its future sight ability. Since no mortal had ever dared to ask for this before, the demon gladly obliged. Raum slams his massive staff into the concrete. The Eye of Horus flares up with a blinding light, carving a glowing magic circle right into the floor. Honestly, Yoon Hyung-han had been dodging this move for a reason. Sure, it was wildly overpowered, but it came with a hard cap of just 3 uses total. And he wasn't dumb enough to burn his trump card on anything less than absolute life-or-death survival. The room practically explodes with energy, projecting fractured clips of the next few hours right into the boss's brain. In the vision, he spots his safe room and surprise Yom Sung-gi is the mastermind playing him. The second he jams his key into the lock, it jams, leaving him wide open for the kid to strike. Bam, dead on the spot. Realizing Yom Sung-gi is orchestrating this whole nightmare makes his blood boil. If Baphomet's whole gimmick was sniffing out the scent of death, then Raum's job was to peek into the immediate timeline and rip it to shreds. Grabbing his walkie, he barks an order at Gagaka. to go absolutely feral on Yeomsung-gi. Only one massive glitch: the kid was flagged as a VIP guest, not a trespasser. The CEO is totally paralyzed again. Just how long has this literal teenager been plotting his downfall? Sweating bullets, he glues his eyes to the security feeds, tracking the squad's every single move. Plot twist though, Yeomsung-gi hadn't actually been cooking this up for months. He honestly lacked the intel to pull off such an insane 4D chess-level strategy by himself. But the boy had backup. He completely trusted the detective to watch his back, keeping him and Woo Min-chae safe on the outside. Without his crew holding the line, he would have been wrecked in this info war instantly. But sucks to be Yoon Hyung-han right now, because his streak of endless luck just completely crashed and burned. Even Rom is low-key shocked watching the dude literally shake in his boots. He had misread the entire board from day one. He assumed the detective and the rogue who snatched the architect were his final bosses. But this random high schooler was a walking Trojan horse. Right now, Gagaka's broken abilities were totally useless. It was a brutal one-on-one survival game. Getting backstabbed by a nobody felt like a slap in the face. He was definitely going to make this brat pay for his arrogance. Screw the rules. He commands Gagaka to go on the offensive, completely ignoring the VIP guest protocols. He refuses to go down without a bloodbath. And honestly, Gagaka is hyped about this green light. Dropping the heavy restrictions was exactly what he'd been begging for. His inner demon is literally vibrating with excitement as it shapeshifts into a perfect clone of Yoon Hyung-han. It was about to turn into the most lethal game of cat and mouse ever. Predictably, the hit squad walked right into his cleverly laid trap. Like total sitting ducks. Just in the first wave alone, he casually tallied up 4 instant kills. He twists the key. The massive blast doors slide open. Comms suddenly buzz with the ultimate leak. The target was spotted near the main lobby. Time to ditch the stealth mission and go loud. Yeomsung-gi is mad confused as to why his mobster bodyguard randomly ditched him, especially since the guy didn't even have a radio on him. The thug claims he tracked the boss to a totally different wing of the mansion, but the math just wasn't mathing. Just surviving in this hellhole while hiding was a miracle. What on earth was this psycho actually planning? The real Yoon Hyung-han is. He pulled up right on Yeomsung-gi, leaving Jinjong to run interference with his disguise. Ram questioned his endgame. Like, was there an actual strategy here? Stepping out into the open was a massive risk, but his mission was crystal clear: hunt down that little nerd and end him. Then his demon piped up, asking how exactly he was going to pull that off. That is when the CEO flashed his key. Dude had the literal power to see the future, a massive cheat code his enemy completely lacked. Meaning, compared to a powerhouse like him, a guy like Yeomsung-gi was straight up incompetent. Shutting down the conversation, Yoon Hyung-han snapped at Rom to never second-guess him again. He absolutely despised anyone acting like they were above him. After all, he built his empire from dirt. Flashback. An old woman shuffled down a pitch-black hallway and pushed open a door. Inside sat a tiny Yoon Hyung-han, just 7 years old. She greeted him with pure warmth, asking if he was hungry, and handed him some roasted sweet potatoes to snack on. The kid proudly declared he was on his grind, studying super hard to become a massive CEO and secure the ultimate bag. His dream of getting rich was honestly so pure, he literally just wanted to live a good life. Pay off his deadbeat dad's massive debt so he and his would not have to keep running away. She gently stroked his hair, whispering that even though chasing clout and money looks blindingly perfect, there were way more important things in life. The kid looked totally lost for a second. But his grandma explained that, for example, all the time they spent together, no amount of cash could ever buy that. Basically, you cannot slap a price tag on everyone. There are just some things even billionaires cannot touch. Bottom line, she begged him not to end up like his dad, totally blinded by greed, who wound up losing absolutely everything because of it. Fast forward a few years, and they were sitting frozen inside a law firm. The bills had finally caught up to them. That mountain of debt was literally impossible for them to clear. The sheer stress made his fragile grandma fatally sick. Just like that, young Yoon Hyung-han was left completely alone in this world. While he was sobbing over his grandma, some guy walked right up demanding the cremation fees. Since the kid was dead broke, the dude brutally snatched the urn right out of his hands, dropping it. It shattered, spilling his grandma's ashes all over the filthy floor. From that exact moment, Yoon Hyung-han hustled like crazy, taking any job he could find. He kept replaying his grandma's words, hoping that money and clout really were not everything. But as he stood staring at his junk in the freezing rain, freshly evicted with his whole life tossed on the street, reality hit him hard. Without serious cash and status, you literally have nothing. He scribbled a note, swearing to never let anyone look down on him again. Locked in completely on his studies. and obsessed over his ultimate goal. He would do whatever it took to hit the absolute top, stepping on the weak, firing the useless, and using anyone who could level him up. That ruthless grind pushed him all the way to the top of QS Corporation, where literal grown men begged crying at his feet, but he felt zero pity for them. Like if they did not want their lives completely ruined, they should have stopped being so utterly incompetent. He just wanted this garbage out of his sight. He wanted to drag all those lucky but completely useless Nepo babies straight down to actual hell. Right then, a shadowy entity approached him, deciding his ruthless vibe was exactly what it needed. It asked if he ever thought about destroying the humans he loathed in a totally different way. And that was when he finally saw a way to never. No more sneaking around this massive estate like a sitting duck. Boom. He finally corners Yum Sung-gi face to face. Sung-gi flinches, completely caught off guard. Since theoretically, this dude was supposed to be stuck way back in the... It was payback time for making him look like a total clown. Sung-gi is stunned, seeing Yoon Eun-han practically breathing down his neck. He was supposed to be trapped at the entrance. The corrupt suit snaps, screaming that he is gonna wreck him for having the absolute audacity to humiliate him. He struts right up to the kid, dripping with pure arrogance, 100% locked in on an easy win. His first massive flex, knowing perfectly well that his opponent could not drag him to hell, because honestly, Sung-gi's hell dimension was completely trashed here compared to his own overpowered setup. Think about it. Even during the brutal clash with Gagaka, or when they crossed paths at the hospital, and even during that totally chaotic party scene, through every single life or death moment where the kid almost got permanently wiped out, he never once activated his ki. Absolute proof that his hell was practically useless. Reason number 2. Sung-gi had already triggered the sin of total incompetence, charging blindly at a powerhouse without even checking their stats, heavily relying purely on basic logic. Against an absolute mastermind like Yoon Eun-han, that pathetic rebellion was literally a fatal mistake, which brings our duo straight into this tense standoff. But hold up. Was the arrogant suit actually right about any of this? Did Sung-gi really fumble that badly with the sin of incompetence? Nope. The verdict was crystal clear. Eun-han's ki stayed completely dead. The businessman's smug grin instantly melts into pure panic and confusion. Because think about it. If he could literally hack time and see the future, while his enemy was clueless, failing to grasp why his power fizzled out, actually made him the incompetent fool. Eun-han violently spins around and starts straight up beefing with Ram, his demon partner. He screams, figuring out this kid's exact move. Doesn't that prove I am way more competent than him? Ram just stares back nervously, gulping down heavy dread. It honestly did not matter how loud his human master raged. It was officially game over. A chilling smirk creeps across Sung-gi's face. Sure, having future sight was an absolutely god-tier hack. But what good is reading the script if you are completely trapped in the scene? Even standing this close to Sung-gi right now, the kid did not sense a single drop of deadly aura, meaning Eun-han was literally zero threat anymore. Think about the cosmic rules. A sin requires actual human action. Does simply thinking about plotting a murder automatically make you a killer? Hard no. Therefore, that grim future Eun-han tried so desperately to rewrite literally did not even count as a sin anymore. Even though he completely predicted Sung-gi's crime, he forcefully wiped it from existence. Nailing the coffin completely shut, Sung-gi brutally roasts him, throwing it in his face that this so-called genius never actually grasped how his own overpowered skills even worked. Eun-han's brain completely short-circuits. The reality was locked in, except for one terrifying detail. Sung-gi's ki was glowing brightly. The frantic suit panics. Why the hell did not this show up in his vision? The brutal truth was staring him down. By messing with the timeline, he handed Sung-gi the ultimate trigger to drag him straight to hell. Because at his greedy core, the businessman had ultimately committed the heavy sin of betrayal again. Eun-han shrieks in absolute agony, crying that he always played it smart and made the right choices, but that was exactly his crime. Always taking the incredibly selfish path to only save his own skin, making a toxic betrayal absolutely inevitable. A dark portal violently rips open and monstrous tentacles lash out, dragging Yoon Eun-han directly into the abyss. And just like that, the suit got bagged, dragged straight down into Yeom Sung-gi's personal hell, screaming his lungs out right before the doors slammed shut. For good. We have a clear winner. Sometimes playing the long game actually pays off. Because he decided to hold off on jumping the detective. That day he ended up snatching Yoon Eun-han instead. Guess this is game over, Ram muttered, literally fading away into pixels right in front of the other two. Baphomet was absolutely thriving. No time to waste, on to the next target. But out of nowhere, Yeom Sung-gi's knees completely buckled. Baphomet was like, "Bro, what's wrong with you?" reminding him they still had a massive roster of players left to wipe out. Yom Sung-gi snapped back that he wasn't going soft. It was the insane adrenaline spike when those mobsters crashed the party, pulling off those crazy split-second brain plays to outsmart Yu Nung-han in the closing. Seconds had completely drained his HP. A regular NPC human could never adapt that fast to a totally unhinged setup like that. His stats were definitely leveling up, and now it was time for them to wrap up this whole messy raid. On one side, you had the CEO's VIP guests, backing Yu Nung-han, and on the flip side, Che Mujin's entire mafia crew, an absolute headache for hell creators, like Gagaka and Park Sang-sik. But flexing the broadcast room to his advantage, Yeom Sung-gi started cooking up a master plan to control the absolute chaos. It was time to clean house. Grabbing his phone, he dialed 911, getting ready to put on an Oscar-worthy performance. He pressed a finger against his vocal cords and started hacking and coughing. The dispatcher picked up, and rocking a super raspy, panicked voice, he started screaming about armed thugs hijacking the party he was at, making it sound like an absolute war zone. The operator immediately demanded the location. Yeom Sung-gi's acting was flawless. He only called the cops because he needed this massive mess swept up as fast as possible. After all, the venue was packed with regular civilians and players all jammed into one spot. If things got even slightly more paranormal, everyone would completely lose their minds and start throwing hands. The second big brain reason he called the cops, he needed Che Mujin's muscle permanently benched, and honestly, the plan worked without a hitch. Sirens blared as the squad rolled up, instantly slamming cuffs on the goons, one by one. But there was a wild card left in play. The girl's demon got caught up in the bust. The absolute second he saw an opening, he hijacked a cop's body. But right after taking over the guy's meat suit, it hit him. The vibes were entirely off. So he just dropped the piece in his hands and sprinted toward her. Yeom Sung-gi was tracking the whole thing through the security cams and barked at Heo Min-chae to ditch the car immediately. She snatched her earpiece and bailed. Yu Nung-han was already dealt with, meaning her gig was officially wrapped. She dropped a quick piece out to Che Mujin and ghosted, blending into the streets like just another local. Seconds later, Cherub pulled up to the whip, stressing hard over his human, totally rattled by how messy things got. She never expected a top-tier strategist as insanely cracked as Yu Nung-han to actually exist. Without even lifting a single finger against his opponent, the dude had completely locked him down and was still openly trolling her. She needed to dip fast. The guy she'd been chatting with on the phone. Meanwhile, Yeom Sung-gi was busy brainstorming how to totally wipe the day's digital footprint. He yanked out a bunch of cables and literally yeeted the PC across the room. Then he relentlessly stomped on the black box until the circuits completely fried out. The cops absolutely about the absolute bloodbath that went down tonight. If word got out, a massive witch hunt against the hell creators would blow up. Snagging a fire extinguisher, he blasted a thick cloud of foam all over the computers. Boom! Phase 1 complete. Now he just needed to melt into the panicked crowd and ghost the scene. Baphomet chimed in asking if they had any loose ends left to tie up. Yeom Sung-gi froze. One final target remained on the hit list, Yu Nung-han's wingman, that streamer Gagacha. With the cops swarming the place and his shady businessman completely off the grid, Gagacha copied Sung-gi's exact playbook, diving into the mob to make a clean break. But out of nowhere, a heavy hand clamped down on his shoulder, nearly making him jump out of his skin. Turning around, he realized the guy looming behind him was just a friendly cop, offering a safe ride home. Breathing a massive sigh of relief, the streamer thanked the officer and hopped into the cruiser, completely hyped that he survived the chaos. Little did he know, Sung-gi's third huge brain reason for calling the cops was to let the detective easily isolate Gagaka from the rest of the pack. Slumping into the back seat, Gagaka let out a heavy breath, completely shook that he actually made it out in one piece. He rattled off his home address to the cop. But this clueless streamer had zero idea that his personal chauffeur was actually another hell creator, Detective Park Sang-sik. The engine roared to life, and they hit the gas. But halfway through the drive, Gagaka's spidey senses started tingling. Something felt insanely off. They definitely weren't cruising toward downtown. Squinting through the dark, he finally locked eyes with the driver in the rearview mirror, and instantly recognized Detective Park Sang-sik. Nung-han swore this guy was on their side, but dragging him to the middle of nowhere. Right after the boss mysteriously vanished, total red flag. This dude was definitely a fake. He had to bail right freaking now. The cruiser wasn't moving that fast, so he could totally tuck and roll to make a desperate leap for freedom. But he aggressively yanked the handle to find the child locks completely engaged. He was totally boxed in. locked in a cage with his worst enemy. A literal cop car isn't some cheap Uber. You can't just bust out of the back seat. Cornered Gagacha desperately flashes his hell key, barking that driving basically makes the cop a sitting duck. Sang-sik doesn't even flinch. He just smirks through the mirror and dares Gagacha to go ahead and rip the portal open. The streamer literally chokes on his own words, completely stunned. He thought he was clutching the ultimate trump card, but nope. His weak bluff was completely useless against a hardened detective. Sang-sik had already cooked up a solid theory about this kid's abilities. Exhibit A. Gagaka only ever dragged his victims to hell from hyper-specific locations. Basically, his cursed power had a strict geolock attached to it. If he didn't literally own the territory, the portal wasn't going to budge. The cop calmly brandishes his own hell key, coldly promising that if Gagaka won't open his domain, the detective is more than happy to pop open his own. Considering the massive body count this streamer had already racked up in the underworld, there was zero shot. The kid was innocent. So if he wanted to keep breathing for another hour, he'd better sit still and zip his lips like a good boy, hitting a total dead end. Gagacha completely folds and accepts the cop's terms. They finally pull up to the drop zone, and standing right there is the final boss himself, Yom Sung-gi. Somehow, this absolute madman beat them to the punch. He cracks a smile, joking that his cab driver pulled a literal, fast and furious drift sequence the second he promised double the cash. Oh, well, the main thing was that he made it in one piece. Time for the main character's grand entrance, the detective chuckles. The second the door unlocks, Gagaka scrambles out faster than a terrified rabbit. He immediately hits his knees in front of Sung-gi, pathetically begging for his life. He bawls that he screwed up and would do literally anything for a pass. But the second he looks up, reality hits him like a truck. This wasn't going to be a walk in the park. The duo stared down at him, like he was just a piece of trash stuck to their shoes. Nyunghan always hyped this guy up as the detective's pathetic sidekick. But the vibe here told a totally different story. The detective was actually taking orders from him, that arrogant businessman. Heavily underestimated this nerd, and it completely destroyed his entire empire. If the mob had handled it, at least they'd leave a corpse behind. Sung-gi slowly steps up to the groveling streamer, who nervously flinches away and whispers that Gagaka, definitely caught on Yu Sunghan, was officially trapped in his own personal hell. So what's the game plan for the little rat left behind? With zero shame, the ginger literally begs for his life. But if this dude wants to survive, he better pull his weight. Carlos flashes a sneaky little smirk. He'd been scheming to use Gagaka the second he spotted him back at the mansion. Why? Because Gagaka's demonic form is an absolute tank for defense. Basically, he's an auto-aiming laser tower wiping out anyone who steps up. But his demon, Jinjiang's ability, that's the real cheat code. He could completely mind-game the enemy or toss him out as the ultimate bait. Taking out Gagaka is a total must before triggering the final boss fight. But right now, they're still mid-game, so keeping him around is a huge flex. Cut to a distance where someone's watching the absolute chaos of cop cars swarming the mansion. Tough break though, with the cops crashing the party. It's game over for now. The Watcher, the demon Sumana, she turns to her human Jane Doe asking who she thinks actually took the dub in this chaotic brawl. Jane straight up says Yu Sunghan totally fumbled the bag, even though she used to think he had main character energy. Think about it. If he actually won, zero chance he's calling the cops and risking his entire reputation getting leaked. If he needed to scrub the scene clean, he would have just dialed up his private security squad to handle it low-key. So there's literally only one answer here. And honestly, it's highly unlikely that Gangster Guy overpowered him either. I mean, ditching his own crew like that makes zero sense. Nah, there's definitely a mystery third player in the mix. Sumana is heavily hyping up her human, brains off the charts, which means their next target on the hit list gotta be that mystery player. After all, they only hunt the biggest whales. Jane Doe aggressively clicks her pen onto her clipboard. Before this random guy can flip the entire game board they set up, she's plotting to send him straight to hell. Smash cut to a trash-filled room where Jong Cheol is just rotting under his blankets. Gorgodon Killis super triggered seeing him act like a total NPC. Look, he knows the dude is completely traumatized. But rotting in bed 24/7 isn't fixing anything. The architect keeps whining about being completely burned out by this whole insane mess. Sick of Yu Sunghan and absolutely done with mafia guys. Just look at him, his precious money-making fingers literally got snapped. After that nightmare, touching grass is a hard pass. He's surviving purely on delivery, food, and isolation. The only reason he even inked a demon contract was because his co-workers were boring as hell. He never signed up for this crazy survival mode. Honestly, Gorgodon is hardcore regretting picking this loser as his human. Suddenly the doorbell starts spamming. Jong Shiel. specifically left a note to just drop the package outside. But whoever's out there is literally mashing the bell. Annoyed out of his mind, he drags himself out of bed and stomps to the door. He swings it open fully, expecting to yell at the delivery guy. But boom, he's staring dead into the eyes of another demon and their human. The kid standing right there, it's Song Minwoo. Age doesn't even matter here, this kid is a legit demon contractor. Meanwhile, the news cycle is going crazy. Every single channel is blowing up about the shady disappearance of the QS corporate boss. Hyun Song-gi blasts the broadcast during her morning run. Honestly, it feels like they finally hit a checkpoint. The sweaty high-stakes hunting vibes have totally chilled out. Gagaka and Hyun Song-gi are literally just hanging out, grinding video games, and having a good time. But don't let that fool you. Choi Hui-min is still hardcore researching in the background. Song Min-woo is casually surviving classes like a normal kid. And Choi Moo-jin, she's grinding hard, doing everything she can to win back the allies that slipped through her fingers. Jong Do-yeon took a breather to cook up her master plan, and honestly, the logic behind this move was dead simple. Now that Yoo Nung-han got wiped off the board, the playing field completely leveled out. Look, when you have a massive crowd of players, it is way too easy to snipe weaknesses and expose everyone's flaws. We are deep into this twisted game now. The survivors are finally catching on to the rules, realizing they would literally become sitting ducks if they flexed too hard and drew unnecessary aggro. Meanwhile, Lucifer is just watching this all go down. Only 7 players left. But this cozy little peace treaty, yeah, it is totally pissing off the king of hell. The dude is literally dying of boredom. Boom. A demon spawns right next to him. Meet Temujel, Lucifer's right-hand guy. He points out that this whole kumbaya setup was totally bound to happen. Games packed with this many people always breed alliances, forcing a boring stalemate. But the king ain't having it. He starts whining that back when he was grinding through this exact same game, 700 years ago, things definitely didn't play out like this snooze fest. He wanted that gut-wrenching anxiety where you can't even blink, the savage, bloodthirsty brawls. That is the chaotic vibe he signed up for. So Temujel pitches a spicy idea to shatter the peace. The king side-eyes him, instantly hooked. His assistant just taps the monitor, pointing dead straight at one specific player. Why not drag this kid up here for a little one-on-one? I mean, this guy is the main reason the game is stuck in easy mode, acting as the glue holding their whole squad together. Cut back to the real world. Yeom Seung-gi is still trekking along, pausing just to catch his breath. Baphomet shadows him, mocking the dude, asking if this puny human isn't exhausted from constantly running for his life. Seung-gi just claps back, saying his insane stamina is literally the only reason he survived that brawl with the serial killer. Plus, he has zero clue what kind of psychotic players are waiting for him next, or what busted demonic powers they might be packing. Baphomet is just standing there, torn between hyping up the kid's sweaty try-hard energy or dragging him for overthinking everything. Seung-gi completely ignores the shade and smoothly pivots, asking how things are holding up down in hell, and if any of the damned souls are trying to pull a prison break. The demon just casually summons his hellish tablet. He admits a few stragglers tried to make a run for it, usually the big brains of the bunch. But let's be real, they both know that no matter how hard these NPCs try, Yeom Seung-gi is built different. The guy's a literal mastermind. His personalized hell has 0 exit signs. There is not even a single glitch suggesting these sinners are plotting a raid or cooking up an escape plan. Suddenly snap. The brick he was clinging to rips straight out of the wall, dragging Yoo Nung-han plummeting into the abyss. But Baphomet wasn't done interrogating him. He leans in, pressing the kid on how long he actually plans to carry this whole Team Alliance vibe. Bro, they are literally at the halfway mark, and keeping this massive squad together is just asking to get backstabbed. It's gonna get super messy if he actually starts catching feelings and caring about these people. Odds are his so-called friends will probably try to wipe him out first. The memory of Hu Min-chae and Park Sang-sik triggering their keys while crying out apologies flashes through his brain. Seung-gi just freezes. Total silence. He straight up grabs Baphomet's shoulder and drops a cold truth bomb. At the end of the day, he calls the shots. The demon just needs to shut up and trust the process. I mean, obviously Baphomet wants to trust the kid, but getting completely erased just because some human caught feelings, yeah, hard pass. Right in the middle of their pep talk, things instantly go off the rails. Both of them snap their heads, staring dead into the heavy smoke, super on edge. Stepping out of the shadows with a smug greeting, it's Temujel. This demon was clearly obsessed with Yeom Seung-gi and how he was absolutely dominating the game. But since he wasn't used to human stuff, the demon literally couldn't even pronounce our boy's full name. Human names were way too extra for him, so he just slapped him with a lazy Yeom whatever. Baphomet immediately stepped up, demanding why they were crashing the party. When Sungi asked who this guy was, the horned demon flexed that he was Baphomet's right-hand man and ultimate successor. At first, our MC was super confused why a high-ranking demon would just randomly spawn in. But then it hit him. Back when this whole twisted game started, Baphomet dropped a massive warning Lucifer could totally flip the rules whenever he felt like it. And boom, that time was right now. He looks the demon dead in the eye and asks if he's here to drop a new rule update. The demon Temagale practically claps for our guy, praising his crazy fast brain. But hold up, before they even got to the rules, the big boss Lucifer actually wanted a one-on-one. The assistant just raises his hand, and a glowing portal instantly rips open right beneath their feet. In a flash, they get teleported straight into the heart of Lucifer's insanely massive palace. The devil himself welcomes them to his literal office. Baphomet drops to his knees, instantly sweating bullets, while Sungi is just standing there totally clueless. Lucifer smirks, admitting he always knew Baphomet was top tier, but he never expected his little human pet to be just as insanely overpowered. Our guy literally managed to unite 4 of the 7 remaining players without throwing a single punch, and even dragged a totally weak underdog onto his squad. Baphomet blushes a bit, saying the boss's praise is making him shy, but Lucifer cuts him off ice cold. That was absolutely not a compliment. The King of Hell stomps toward them. This horned demon and his human were completely ruining his vibe. He wanted raw chaos, blood-epic, nail-biting battles. Instead, they turned his deathmatch into a wholesome little friendship simulator with cozy partnerships, basically a kid's game that literal toddlers could play. He takes a deep breath, trying to chill out. After venting his absolute fury, the king admits he totally wants to force Baphomet to pick a brand new human to replace Sungi on the spot, but that would be super unfair and way too random, especially since our boy hadn't actually broken a single rule. So because of that loophole, he decided to slap them both with a nasty little penalty. Lucifer snaps his fingers and boom, 2 glowing screens pop out of nowhere. One screen shows Hu Min Che, and the other shows Park Sang-sik. The devil flashes this completely psychotic smile and drops a bomb. Sungi has exactly 1 week to drag one of his own allies straight to hell. Sungi freezes desperately, trying to process. He whips his head toward Baphomet, completely baffled. Bro, are you kidding me? Can they really just force a rule like this? He played the game perfectly. He literally didn't break a single rule. Forcing him to backstab his own squad was straight up rigged. Baphomet instantly panics, hissing at him to watch his mouth. Because hello, they were literally standing in front of Lucifer, the absolute king of hell. But honestly, our MC does not care, fiercely pushing back. He argues there's zero logic in getting punished when he played by the book the whole time. Lucifer chuckles. So gutsy. He admits the kid was definitely worth making a contract with. But at the end of the day, his word is absolute law. This entire deathmatch, it's literally just a Twitch stream. Basically, if Sungi didn't want to play along with the shiny new update, he could be permanently deleted and replaced in a heartbeat. That's the exact moment a chilling wave hits Sungi. He finally felt the suffocating raw power of the king. His back was completely against the wall. He had no choice but to decide who stays on the squad and who gets dragged straight down to hell. And with that massive bombshell dropped, Lucifer was done talking. He dismisses them to go back and make their impossible choice. But right before sending them back to the human world, Lucifer slaps Baphomet's shoulder, shooting him a death glare. Don't you dare let this game get bored. With that final chilling threat hanging in the air, he kicks them out. Back at their spot, Yom-Sungi feels this weird burning itch on his left hand. He yanks up his sleeve to see what's up. Boom. There's a literal countdown ticking away right on his arm. Bro is officially on the clock. This timer wasn't just a massive headache. It was a brutal reminder that they were nothing but pawns in the king's twisted game. Sungi's mind drifts to Park Sang-sik and Hu Min Chai. He knew the harsh reality sooner or later in this deathmatch. He'd have to wipe both of them off the board. But for now, he just twists the key and steps into the detective's crib. Slumping onto the couch, his brain goes into overdrive, battling between cold logic and his own feelings. Taking out his own crew just completely went against Sungi's entire vibe. Definitely not this early in the game, and 100% not like this. Suddenly, an idea clicks and he decides to press his demon for answers. But before he can even drop a single word, Baphomet cuts him off. The demon smirks, asking if he wants to know which of his 2 buddies is more useful for survival. But that wasn't even close to what Sungi was plotting. He actually, specifically the big boss Lucifer. Baphomet is totally thrown off, wondering what the heck this human is getting at. So our boy goes straight for the kill, asking exactly how. Lucifer managed to snatch total control over hell. And if there was any possible loophole, the demon just stares at him, absolutely shook by his sheer audacity. A power grab like that had literally never even crossed his mind. The king secured his god-tier status by crafting the most insane underworld of them all, the Hell of Disbelief. And let's be real, this place was an absolute masterpiece. Never in history was there an underworld so stacked with humans just screaming and sobbing in pure despair. Never had there been a hell with such a flawless layout, crazy flexibility, and top-tier aesthetic. Basically, the massive success of his realm skyrocketed his rank, and he quickly snatched up all the power. But wait, there was a massive missing puzzle piece in this lore. What on earth actually went down with Dante? Turns out the guy got hooked up with eternal life as a sick payout, which basically means Dante was the original architect of hell, and there's a solid chance he's still kicking around today. Technically speaking, yeah. He was the first one to do it, and he is probably out there right now. But hold up. What if Dante gets dragged straight to hell? What happens to Lucifer then? Cut to a priest's voice echoing through a massive cathedral. He's preaching the word of God, hyping up faith while his hardcore followers soak up every word. Plot twist. This holy guy is literally Dante himself, the mastermind behind the hell of disgrace. If you do the math, if Dante, the exact human who made a deal with Lucifer, gets dumped into hell, the king would just straight up vanish. Sungi instantly shoots up from the couch. But Baphomet is already shutting that crazy idea down. After all, it was just some wild fan theory. Going toe-to-toe with the Lord of Hell wouldn't be a walk in the park. His best bet was just to make a choice. Lay low and survive this match until he was the last man standing. That was definitely the safest play to keep everyone breathing. But Sungi was locked in. The game had just totally changed, and if Lucifer flipped the script, the demon boss could totally keep this sick game running, while still bending his own rules. But casually tossing in all these unhinged side quests. Just to target me, yeah, no. Basically, I am a massive thorn in his side. He'll probably change the rules right before the finale just to stop me from taking the win. They lock eyes in total silence. Baphomet couldn't even cap the guy was literally making top-tier demons box each other. That was a ridiculously savage way to flex his power, and now things were getting real. He basically wanted to keep Yamsungi on a super tight leash. And to make matters worse, this dude's absolute living nightmare was practically guaranteed to drag on forever. The demon stood dead still, completely hooked on whatever wild scheme his human was cooking up. Because this whole thing could seriously spark an all-out turf war over who controls hell. Yamsungi just casually stretched out his arm to Baphomet, swearing that if this crazy gamble actually worked, his survival rate would skyrocket.